This September 19th, 2017 meeting of the Stafford Board of Supervisors is called to order. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Ms. Bumke?
Here.
Mr. Cavalier?
Here.
Mrs. Maurer?
Here.
Mr. Milday?
Here.
Ms. Sellers?
Here.
Mr. Snellings?
Here.
Mr. Thomas?
Here.
Mr. Chairman, you have a quorum.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon. Thank you all for joining us here and at home. My name is Paul Milday. I represent the Aquia District of the Board of the Stafford County. I want to say a little bit about emergency preparedness. We've had an unusually, a lot of hurricanes we've been reading about and being some of us affected by. So in light of that, I'd ask you to be as prepared as possible, and we can try to help if you visit www.staffordfirerescue.com and click on the emergency management page. There are all kinds of helpful hints and information that can help you be ready in an emergency. And also, if you can, please make time and plan to attend the Preparedness Expo that we are holding on Saturday, September 23rd from 10 a.m. until 2 p.m. at the Public Safety Building right here behind us. You can find out more about keeping your family safe in the event of an emergency. And there's a low chance that would be needed, but it really pays off dividends if it is needed. Also, just a quick note about our sign enforcement. We sent out a press release, and I know it's getting coverage regarding our efforts to enforce fines on those who post illegal signs in the right-of-ways and county roads. Illegal signs are hazardous, besides just not looking good, and we spend about $400,000 a year out of the our board's budget, which is essentially our money and that in Fredericksburg's picking up signs and trash around the county, and most of it is just from those signs. We have one of the most liberal sign policies now of any county that I know of, where anyone can put a sign in their yard or on their business up to a certain square footage, and you can put big signs, 4x8s, for a couple of times a year for 60 days each. So we have we're not too stringent on signs, but we're going to start fining people $100 for putting them in rights of ways. We've had so many signs. We've had such a bad problem with it and lots of complaints. So we all feel strongly about keeping Stafford beautiful. And illegal signs in our gateways don't help us to do that. Speaking of the environment, our next presentation is to a citizen and a friend of mine and a friend of Jack Cavalier's, and really to the whole county, Sam Hess. He's made it his business to help keep waterways clean, as he's worked on the Wetlands Board for 19 years. So we're going to read a proclamation to you, Sam, if you want to come up, and Jack and I would like to thank you from the board.
Yes.
Good to see you.
Same here.
Thanks for coming. Sam's also he's a Aquia Harbor resident. Some of this is probably covered in here, and he's a Lion. Jack's been a Lion longer than I have, but I've been on. Yeah, and I met Sam. I think it was Ken Mitchell that was it Ken that put you on the wetlands?
You're making me feel old. Ken, I see his picture up there. Ken's still around 19 years ago. 19
years ago. So that's a couple of people before me, and I've been around here a long time. So this proclamation is to recognize Sam Hess for his service on the Wetlands Board, the Chesapeake Bay Board, and the Coastal Primary Sand Dunes Board. Whereas Sam Hess is a longtime resident of Aquia Harbor and joined the Aquia Harbor Host Lions Club in 1981. Since that time, he has held numerous positions, including president, vice president, and chairman of the club's many activities. Most notable, he was the Bland chairman for the past 13 years. And whereas over the past 30 years, Mr. Hess has helped the Lions with a variety of community service projects, including Christmas tree sales, White House ornament sales, mulch sales, Football Mania, 4th of July, and Oktoberfests, and many more. Whereas Mr. Hess was named a Melvin Jones Fellow, the highest honor given by the Lions Club's International Foundation, and truly lives the Lions motto, "We serve." And whereas Mr. Hess has faithfully served on the Wetlands Board for over 19 years, and whereas in 2009, When the Coastal Primary Sand Dunes Board was formed, and in 2014, when the Chesapeake Bay Board was formed, Mr. Hess did not hesitate to volunteer to serve on those boards as well. Whereas, the work of Mr. Hess and others on the wetland boards, and the Coastal Primary Sand Dunes Board, and the Chesapeake Bay Board has helped preserve and protect Stafford's tidal wetlands and beaches, and has been integral to the safeguarding and conservation of some of Stafford's greatest resources, its abundant bodies of water. Now, therefore, be it proclaimed by the Stafford County Board of Supervisors this 19th day of September 2017, that it be and hereby does recognize, commend, and gratefully acknowledge Mr. Sam Hess for his many years of service on the Chesapeake Bay Board, the Coastal Primary Sand Dunes Board, and the Wetlands Board. And we're going to miss you, Sam. Thank you. After 19 years, you must have something to say.
Yeah, 19 years is a long time. I can remember when we started, it seems like everything we were doing was after the fact permits, and people eventually, now we hardly ever see any more of them. Folks are getting accustomed to what they need to do to work on their wetlands and improve them without destroying them. So it's come a long way, and I hope it continues to be that way. And I thank the board for acknowledging me for being here that long. Thank you.
Thank you, Sam. Thanks, Sam. And next, I have a United Way presentation. So for ALICE, it's an acronym, Asset Limited Income Constrained Employed. Ms. Sarah Walsh is here somewhere. Thanks for coming.
Good afternoon. Actually, my name's Janelle Donahue. We had Sarah doing the presentation, but it's a pleasure to be with you all today. Usually when Rappahannock United Way is standing before you, there are pledge cards in front of you. There are no pledge cards in front of you today. Actually, we're bringing something to you to use today, and it's a pleasure to be with you. Computer, please. At Rappahannock United Way and at other United Ways across the state of Virginia, we're very excited to bring to you the ALICE report. As you can see, it's a very comprehensive report, a very big report. United Way coined the acronym, as you stated. ALICE is Asset Limited, Income Constrained, Employed. And ALICE, the project, shines a spotlight on a large population of hardworking individuals in our communities. These are individuals who may have lower paying jobs. These are individuals who may have little to no savings and are one emergency away from falling into poverty. The United Way ALICE report is the most comprehensive depiction of financial needs in the state to date. This is using data from a variety of sources, including the U.S. Census. We're excited that the report unveils new measures based on present-day income levels and expenses of how many Virginian workers are struggling financially and why. And you can see from this report in the state, we are the 15th state to bring this report to the state of Virginia, for Virginia. This is the 15th state to do this. We came together as United Ways across the whole state of Virginia to bring this information to our community. 22 United Ways worked together to bring it here, and Rappahannock United Way was the lead organization and the fiscal agent for the project. If you know, United Way, although each United Way is autonomous and separate, there are 1,800 United Ways across the U.S., and we are also in 41 countries. But we're each local, and we solve the problems of our own community. Our goal at Rappahannock United Way is to help more households emerge from poverty and achieve greater financial stability. But we brought this report to our community because we had to ask a question: what is poverty, and how do we help households emerge from poverty? So let me tell you about ALICE. ALICE, as I said, it was an acronym for Asset Limited, Income Constrained, and Employed. What does that mean? So ALICE, they're households. For the report, we don't use individuals, we use households. They're households. They earn above the federal poverty level. Can anybody tell me what the federal poverty level is for a family of 4?
Please.
$11,000 for a single person, but for a family of 4, it's $24,000. Can any of you imagine making a living for a family of 4 on $24,000? This is the federal poverty level that's used by many of our nonprofits to determine if someone is in need or not in our community. This level has not changed since the 1970s. Households who are working in needed jobs and don't have enough to pay for the basic necessities. That includes housing, food, childcare, healthcare, and transportation. Anybody think of who Alice would be in our community? You see them every day. Think about it. Child care workers, home health aides, retail workers, service providers, store clerks, office assistants. These are individuals that are invaluable to our system and our community. Alice could be a new graduate just starting out. Some of you might be shaking your head thinking your daughter or son, they're Alice. Maybe it's a young family. Maybe it's a retiree. Some households become Alice. And why is that? They become Alice because of an unforeseen life event. Perhaps a life-altering health diagnosis, a job loss, a family crisis such as death or divorce. We see Alice every day. We all know Alice. Alice may be in our families. Alice may be our neighbors. Alice is probably right here in this audience with us today. We receive goods and services from Alice. We may even currently be Alice. And Alice, as what I want you to know is Alice typically is not eligible for governmental services. They're typically not eligible for nonprofit services in our community because they usually make just above or above the income level where those individual organizations have set to help individuals. Really, they're almost virtually invisible to our community. Their struggle is unseen, except to each one of us individually. In the state of Virginia, you might be surprised by how many people are Alice. In the state of Virginia, according to our report, 11% of our community lives at the federal poverty level. 11%. But in the state of Virginia, 28% above that 11% are Alice. So that means in the state of Virginia, 39% of individuals in our community are struggling to make a basic survival budget. The basic cost of living is outpacing our wages. The cost of basic household expenses in Virginia is more than most state jobs can support. The average household survival budget for Virginia, for a family of 4, you remember the federal poverty level, right? That was at $24,000. The average in the state of Virginia is $61,000, and that's for a survival budget. You are currently getting the summary for Alice, for the region, as well as the information for Stafford on the back. The number of Alice households in Virginia has steadily increased since 2007. In 2007, the number of Alice households was 715,000. In 2015, the last date for our report for numbers is 859,000. That's a 20% increase in households in Virginia that are struggling to make a basic needs survival budget. And what happens when households can't make ends meet? What happens to your businesses? What happens to those employees? What happens when individuals forgo health care? You probably see more people missing work. You probably then lose more employees and turnover goes and increases. What about child care? When people can't afford accredited child care, they're using family and friends. Family and friends who are not committed to that person going to jobs every day. What happens when someone misses enough work because they don't have quality child care and reliable child care? They miss work. And when they miss work too much, what happens? They lose their job. And then they spiral, perhaps even to the federal poverty level. They reduce productivity, and insurance premiums are increased, and that means taxes for everyone. This is the household survival budget presented in the report for Virginia, And so when we're looking at a survival budget, we're only looking at housing, childcare, food, transportation, healthcare, taxes, and miscellaneous. So in the state of Virginia, for a family of 4, and the report uses 2 adults, 1 infant, and 1 toddler, because that's usually the most expensive for basic household expenses. In the state of Virginia, the average is $61,000 that a family has to have just to make the basics. That's not any of the bells and whistles and extras that we have. What about Stafford County? In Stafford County, and this report does a summary for every county and city in the state of Virginia, so we can do comparisons and we can look at our own counties. So here we have the most basic survival budget for Stafford County. If we're looking at housing, for 2 adults and 1 infant and 1 preschooler, the average housing cost is about $1,400. If we look at the health care cost, $767 a month. And for an annual total of $81,000 to live in Stafford County. Now, not everybody is Alice that makes below this, because a lot of people can make and meet their needs. But some people don't have resources, some people don't have family nearby. It's a real struggle. What about in the state of Virginia? As we can look in places like Fairfax and Falls Church and Fairfax, their ALICE percentages are 22% and 27% respectively. And in Alexandria, it's 24%. But the state of Virginia has high increases. For example, Harrisonburg City, 65% of individuals in that county are ALICE and are struggling to make the survival household budget. And in Petersburg City, it's 66%. In Stafford County, we're somewhere right in the middle at 35%. The ALICE report represents unbiased data. It shines a light on a previously hidden population. The report clearly shows us who Alice is, where Alice lives, and how Alice struggles in the state of Virginia. I really invite you all to look more into the report and to see how all sectors, businesses, nonprofits, the government, faith-based organizations, community groups, schools, elected officials, community leaders, and concerned citizens, how can we all learn more about this hidden population, and what can we do to empower them, to educate them, and to help solve the problems and create support systems around Alice. So this report really is a call to action to be educated, to know about Alice, and what we can do to support Alice in the future. I just want to thank you all for listening to me today, and I'm happy to answer any questions if you have questions.
Any questions for Ms. Donahue?
Do you guys work directly, specifically looking at the child care costs, like working with the school system? Because I don't know if you're familiar with the Head Start program, but we actually offer Head Start to I think as young as 2 or 3.
2-year-olds.
And it makes a lot of sense why they have such a long wait list if it costs $1,500 a month to put your child in child care.
Child care expenses are tremendous. I'm blessed. I've just left those age groups. Rappahannock United Way, we partner with Smart Beginnings, and that brings quality child care to our region. They also have, they're working with groups to bring subsidized child care to individuals and families. But as you know, one of the reasons we're bringing Alice to our community is so many of our programs are based on income. And sometimes we need to base it on need and not just a level of an income. There are a lot of people in need, but they have a long waiting list, and that's exactly right, is because child care costs are so expensive.
Yeah, they have a huge waiting list. And
It's a
based
huge
on
waiting
income.
list. So we've been working with Smart Beginnings and trying to solve that problem. We also have worked with the YMCA. They have a child care program there as well.
Okay.
Any other questions? All right, with that, I'll
Thank
thank
you.
you. And I want to mention that Stafford County employees hold a month-long fundraising event for United Way once a year. I think we raised about $50,000 the last time we did it, so thanks for that partnership.
They've started that again, and we're looking forward to a successful year.
And Ms. Bompkin.
I just want to say thank you, Janelle, and just let my colleagues know that she actually made the same presentation to the George Washington Regional Commission last night, which is our regional committee that can help address some of these needs as well. So thank you.
Thank you. I'm looking forward to partnering with you all further. Thank you.
Thank you. At this point, I'll ask if we have any, I know we have one deletion from the agenda. we have any additions or deletions besides this one? It's listed on our handout?
That's
All
the
right.
only item.
All right, with that, I'll entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Please cast your votes, and you may tally them when you're ready. And that passes unanimously. This brings us to presentations by the public. We're happy you are here. I know a lot of you have things you'd like to say, and I have a stack of speaker cards I'm going to go through first. But we appreciate sincerely your interest in Stafford County and things that our government is involved with. At this meeting, you'll just have one opportunity to comment because there are no public hearings this afternoon or this evening. So you may come up and speak to whatever issue you would like. I would only ask that you keep it polite and address the board. You'll have a green light. You'll state your name and address. You'll have a green light that'll come on when you've done that, and you'll get 3 minutes, but at 2 minutes, you'll see a yellow light that tells you that you're almost running out of time. And at the red light, your time is up, and it would be time for you to let someone else speak. So with that, let me start with my first, Greg, this is for you. I can't pronounce your last name properly, but please, come on up. Mhm.
Hello, my name is Gregory Gavin. I'm 242 Stony Hill Road out in Hartwood. I'd like to thank you for your efforts concerning effective or ineffective external lighting ordinances. Thank you and some of your members here for expanding the debate and the dialogue. Even though it may seem abstract and mundane, it is important as it affects all of us. With the tremendous building boom going on in Hartwood and the rest of the county, the issue will likely come up between old and new neighbors. I'd like to start my presentation, if we could.
Computer, please.
This is where I left off last time. I went down to Walmart to check out some values of the lights. If I can show you what we have down at Walmart. Pictured here is the external lighting value for Walmart down at Warrenton Road on Route 17. The Lexometer shows that it comes up at 0.20 foot candles. The proposal that you all have offered here is 2.5 times brighter than Walmart. Once again, I live in Hartwood. I live on a golf course. It's very nice. We move out to the country to get away from these lights. You've brought commercial value of lighting into my backyard, into everyone's backyard. It's uncivil. I'm sorry. Next slide, please. If I could, there's a couple points here. The words were a bit problematic. Believe it or not, pointed down is subjective and problematic. You wouldn't think it is, but it is. If I go to the next slide, please. This was actually presented to the planning committee. This is a very crude drawing. The diagram here is to be used by Stafford County employees when determining light trespass. This exemplifies a feeble understanding of the physics of light and light trespass. Floodlights simply do not project like this. Floodlights flood an area. Once again, it just kind of shows how left field everybody is. I don't mean to say that, but it's the truth. If you look at that, light does not shine like that. A floodlight blares out everywhere. You cannot control it. Next slide, please. I brought in, this is a little bugger here that's caused little problems between neighbors. If anyone wants to look at it, I don't expect that you do, but it's right here if you want to look at it. It costs $26. It goes all over the place. You see, it's got the features there. It goes 180 degrees, goes out 70 feet. My neighbor's house is 50 feet back from the road. Literally, if you stand in front of the road, the light will come on you. All the lights will come on. Next slide, please. Some of the other features it has is a manual override. You refer to these lights as motion-controlled lights. They're simply just the floodlights. If you manual override, option allows lights to be turned on and off manually using an existing wall switch. It's just a floodlight. For some reason, you've exempted it. It makes no sense to me. Next slide, please. You proposed that we have durations of 15 minutes right now and down to 7. I guess it was just something to appease me. It's a half of 15 possibly, a 7.5. I found the number 7 minutes absurd. There's no other way to see it. If you buy one of these things, they come in 1 minute light durations, 5 or 10. I don't know how we get 7 or 15. How is that supposed to apply? Lastly, I would just like to have residential limits similar to the Cardinal Forest subdivision across from Walmart in 17. Most of all houses there illuminate at .02 foot candles. I propose we keep Mr. Dayton's .05 foot candles limit.
Thank you, Mr. Gavin.
This is actually quite reasonable and generous. Thank you.
Thank you. My next speaker is Melissa Dillio, and then after that is Jennifer Nee. You're welcome to get in line, and after that is Amy Bancroft.
Good afternoon. My name is Melissa DeLeo. I live at 212 Stern Cove in Stafford, and I'm here. I've been at the past two meetings, and I was coming here today to once again bring up the issue of the Confederate flag on I-95. I would like you as a board to speak, make a decision, say something to the public. I know that I read in the paper that Mr. Milty had made a statement. It was a personal statement that he had made, and I appreciate him making a statement, but I would like to hear as a board what you feel can be done about this flag. We did not just ask that the flag be taken down. Many people came here and asked that a multicultural committee be established, which I thought was a fabulous idea. I had not heard of that prior. We had asked that maybe you as a board put stronger words on the website describing Stafford County and saying that we do not agree with that flag. We had also asked that perhaps something could be erected on the highway as well. So I'm just here today to let you know that I haven't forgotten, and I am still looking for my government to make a statement on this flag, and I will continue to come until you do so. But thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Hi, how are you? My name is Jennifer Nee, and I live in the Quiet District. Dear Board, I've been a parent at Shirleyheim, I'm sorry, let me start over, I apologize. I've been a parent of a Shirleyheim student for the past 4 years, and I have 2 years to go. Every single time I leave the school, I say a little prayer, and I hope I don't get into an accident. It's gotten to the point where I won't even let my father-in-law pick up the kids from school because it is so dangerous. I spoke with VDOT in recent months, and they informed me a light had been approved. I then found out it could be a few years before one is actually installed. The intersection of Telegraph and Route 1 is dangerous. The intersection of Woodstock Lane and Route 1 is dangerous. We're playing with fire here. Last week, there was a terrible accident in the intersection of Route 1 and Telegraph Road. Fortunately, no one died, but people did get hurt. I travel this route often, and it's scary. I implore you to please position a temporary light at either intersection before a child gets hurt. The Sheriff's Office has deemed these intersections dangerous. There have been many accidents, and we have hundreds of kids using these intersections on a daily basis. I know putting up a temporary light costs money. I get it. However, if a light makes our children safer, isn't every penny worth it? A temporary light is a common sense fix to a problem that isn't going to go away. It is your job as our Board of Supervisors to keep the people in our county safe, especially our children. This light should have been put up 10 years ago when the school was built, but better late than never. Please do the right thing and vote for a temporary light, because God forbid a life is lost. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Hi there, thank you for your time. My name is Amy Bancroft. I live in the Aquia District, and I am also here to speak to you in support of a traffic light to benefit Shirleyheim Middle School, Widewater Elementary School, the residents of Widewater, and every county resident who travels to this area for games scheduled at Patawomack Park or even attend events at Potomac Point Winery. My daughter is a student athlete at Shirleyheim Middle School and has to be picked up at 5:00 p.m. every day after practice, which is the most unfortunate time of day to attempt to bring our children home. Traffic southbound on Route 1 is bumper to bumper, and vehicles traveling northbound are speeding with zero room for error. There is no median lane to assist in merging onto southbound traffic on Route 1. It is a wing and a prayer driving these 11-year-old girls home from practice each day. As of this week, the school buses are now being instructed to go 6 miles north of the stoplight near Boswell's Corners, near the Marine Corps Base Quantico gate. Adding another 30 to 40 minutes of traffic and commuting time for buses who have elementary school runs afterwards is unacceptable. And pushing vehicles further north certainly does not assist the already congested streets and heavy traffic flow. 3 years ago, I jumped on this crusade after researching the amount of accidents on this stretch of road compared to Courthouse Road. We requested VDOT do research for this light. I have spoken further to VDOT and researched. A light was approved and was deemed a necessity, and 3 years later, still nothing. We have spoken to Ms. Hazard, chairman of the school board, and other members of the school board who also agree. We have spoken to Scott Horan, the assistant superintendent of facilities, who suggested a traffic light 10 years ago when Shirley High Middle School opened its doors. He still hopes for a new traffic light and is working on a safe solution for the school buses. We have spoken to the sheriff's office. We were told they understand how dangerous this area is and the traffic congestion continued to grow. Our situation will only worsen. The sheriff's office did research studies and recommended to VDOT 2 areas, one on Route 17 and Washington Street and the other one at Route 1 and Telegraph Road. Route 17 was completed, and Telegraph Road continues to be dangerous. I understand a land deal may be involved with the progress of commercial developer so that traffic can move forward. The safety of our children and family safety cannot be at the mercy of a commercial developer. I feel it's irresponsible to continue to put county residents at risk. When Colonial Forge High School needed a stoplight, they got one immediately. I'm so glad for them, as I believe all of our students deserve safety. Our stretch of Route 1 is more traveled, has more congestion, and we've been waiting for 10 years. We cannot wait for another accident or fatality to do the right thing. Please consider supporting a stoplight in this area.
Thank you, Ms.
you so
Bancroft.
much.
Lydia Leap is my next speaker. After Ms. Leap is Mr. Johnson Miles. And then Kim Wyman.
Hi, my name is Lydia Leap, and I live in the Quiet District. And like my friends that spoke before me, I'm here for the same reason they were, to ask that a light be put in at Telegraph and Route 1 or Woodstock Lane and Route 1, because they made some excellent points, and I just want to reemphasize what they were saying. I feel like every child has the right, every teacher has the right to feel safe and secure, and if you pull out on that road, especially at rush hour, you're not safe at all. Like, you literally have to pray. That's why the crucifix is there. It's really scary. And like Amy said, as of yesterday, the school buses now go to Boswell's Corner, which you have to go north now to go south. And that's putting them on Telegraph longer and Route 1 longer. And Route 1, like just when I was coming here, there was an accident on Route 1. And also, everybody jumps off of 95 and gets on Route 1. And it's just insane. And the commute home also doubled now. So, for those kids, because my son's bus ride was 3 miles long home, so now it's 6.5 miles, just one way. So, it's ridiculous. And so, I'm just here asking for your guys' help and say, please, 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 because like they said, we've waited 10 years, and it's really scary. And I'm so happy that Colonial Forge did get the light. They deserve it. There's a lot of people that go to the school. The school's crowded, so they need the light. But don't forget us over here on the east side, because, you know, it's just, these kids are kids, and everybody's important everywhere. And just as I said, everybody should feel safe. I hadn't planned to speak on this, but I grew up in the South. I don't know if you can tell from my accent or not, but I did, and I know about Southern pride and heritage and Confederate flags. Trust me, I know all about it. I was lucky enough to go on vacation this past summer, and we went to Germany, and we went to a concentration camp, and I noticed that there's not swastikas, there's not statues of Hitler there in Germany. What they do, so they don't forget the past, is every year school children take field trips to the concentration camps. So they know, they learn about their past and everything, but they don't make it obnoxious and put it in everybody's face. So I just feel like every child and adult whatever you look like, you should just feel safe and secure. That's all. Thank you.
Mr. Johnson Miles. That crucifix, by the way, is to mark the first settlement, Catholic settlement in Virginia, just in case anyone. And it's on private property. Mr. Johnson Miles?
Hello. My name is Bill Johnson Miles. I live at 27 Allegheny Drive in Stafford. I did not write anything this time, so bear with me if I'm a little nervous, and I'm going to sort of wing it a little bit, just sort of have notes rather than having something to read, so I'm not used to this. But the lady before me just talked about history, and I know that when you wrote your statement about welcoming and inclusiveness, and you put that on the website, and you read it out loud, you also made sure you included the remarks about honoring our history. I just want to remind you, by the way, that is no longer on the website because it's rolled down like all the other news, so it's already rolled off. In fact, probably rolled off the website within just a few days. But I want to remind you that the history of Stafford includes 1,000 of men who went off to fight for the Confederates, 1,000 of about 5,000 white men and women who went off and fought for the Confederates, who waved that Confederate battle flag, and the whole reason they did that was to preserve the institute of slavery, all right? And that was economy to them, yes. The history is about money, but that's how they got free labor. It was that they had slaves. The number of slaves before the Civil War in Stafford County, 3,394 slaves in Stafford County, and that's according to the 1860 census, all right? So, and that's about 39% of the population of Stafford County at that time. So the history includes slavery, something that we should be against, that we probably should apologize for. As an American, I know that my history and all of our history includes slavery, includes the internment of the Japanese during the World War II, includes the extermination of the American Indians, of the Native Americans. I think that we should denounce that. And for the most part, most Americans have denounced the internment of the Japanese, and we've apologized for that and what we've done to the American Indians. But Stafford County has not said or done anything about the Confederate battle flag or slavery in this state. And we should. We should say something about it. You guys need to say something about it. The sign back there that says, "Love conquers hate." It's time, that's my sign. It's time that the Stafford Board of Supervisors live up to those words.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson Miles. Kim Wyman, and then Clayton Hill. And after Clayton Hill is Ruth Carloni.
I'm short, bear with me. My name is Kim Wyman. I live in Spotsylvania County, 22407. I am here once again to discuss the flag. I'm here with my oversized flag again. I know y'all remember me from last time. I'm a very memorable character. What I want to talk about is solutions. I know that if you go after this flag, the flaggers are going to come after you. We're talking lawsuits, lawyers, and a lot of money we don't have to waste. I offer a solution. What I want you to do is put up a billboard on either side of I-95 where that flag is and say, in Virginia, we believe in free speech. That flag is on private property. However, that flag does not speak for Stafford, Fredericksburg, or Spotsylvania. That flag is at the last exit before Fredericksburg. My business is in Fredericksburg, and I know as a Yankee, or a damn Yankee, depending on who you ask, that Yankees tend to drive on past that flag. We see it as a symbol of hate. We see it as a symbol of not heritage, hatred. And most of the people driving on I-95 don't know the difference. They don't know that it's the battle flag of the Army of Northern Virginia, and they don't care. It's a symbol of hate. It was corrupted by the neo-Nazis, by the Klan. Once that symbol became their symbol, it's no longer, oh, it's just about history and heritage. It's not. I want people to stop and spend money in Fredericksburg. I want them to go to my business and shop. If they're driving on by because of that stupid Confederate flag, they're not going to spend their money. This is economics. There is no free speech issue with telling them what height they can fly their flag at. If you can tell somebody in a neighborhood what light bulb they have to have in a fixture, I think you can set the height of the flag. I'm not an expert. I'm not a lawyer. But I'm very passionate about this issue. I need you to do something. You're hurting my business, you're hurting my city, you're hurting my county. And Spotsylvania, or Stafford doesn't really get hurt by it because it's the very last exit. Or what I'd like you to do is get a piece of property across. I want you to put up an 80-foot flagpole and fly a Black Lives Matter flag or a gay pride flag. Because I know if I was flying an Antifa flag, you would move heaven and earth down. So it's not about the message. It's about inaction. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Wyman. Before, sir, as you come up, I want to realize that our House of Delegates Representative Mark Dudenheffer, representing the 2nd, is in the audience, and a former chairman of this board. I just want to say hello and thanks for gracing us. Now back to our schedule. Sir, you may come up. That was all I had to say. Mr. Hill, sorry about that.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak again. I spoke at one of the last meetings, and I'm going to reiterate some of what I said regarding the Confederate flag, and specifically the property that it's on. The individual posted in 2014, August of 2014, in the Washington Times, a screed on racist screed. And that flag is about hate, not heritage, but it's hiding behind that because of what he's been told to say. This is what he said in his screed, and I'm going to read this again. Most blacks are a worthless bunch of freeloading, dangerous animals that could be put down, or that should be put down, like the dogs they are. That's hate. This county is not about hate. I mentioned at the last meeting of the nearly 46 years that I personally have put in defending this country for the right, for the freedom from racism and the freedom from discrimination. And that flag represents those values, things that I spent my time defending this country against. I had 46 years, enlisted Navy, midshipman at Annapolis. I had 12 years as a Marine Corps officer and 27 years working for the Department of Defense Night Vision Electronic Sensors Directorate. My history and my family goes back even farther to World War II, where my uncle was a survivor of the Bataan Death March. Under the Japanese, he was slavery. He was subjected to slavery. He was cited for standing up for the prisoners. My uncle was on the USS Wasp when it got hit. This was starting in World War II. My father fought in North Africa against the Nazis who fought against this kind of racist stuff. And my mother was also in the Army. Yes, she wore Army boots. And my father continued to work for the Central Intelligence Agency as an Eastern European analyst. We have a history in our family, and I'm just one of many, a history of defending this country against racism. So this flag, based on this screed, has one intent and one intent only, and that's to flip off blacks. And it is under the guise of hatred. It is under the guise of heritage. It's not heritage. It's flipping off blacks, and it's flipping off everybody in this room, because I understand that flag is on his property and it's being leased out to the Virginia flaggers. So he's making money off of it and flipping us off. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hill. Ms. Carloni? Oh. Next speaker is Debbie Lockhart. Do I have that right? And then after that is Keith Lockett. Keith Lockett after Debbie Lockett.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and board. My name is Debbie R. Lockett, and I live on 240 River Road in the Aquia District. The Constitution of the United States preamble starts with, "We the people of the United States," not "we the people of the Confederate States," nor "we the people of the Union States." As they hang on to their heritage and history, would this be an issue if the shoe was on the other foot? How would your ancestors have liked to have been brought from another land, tied and shackled together in the bottom of a boat to a land they knew nothing about as chattel? How would your ancestors have liked being treated less than human, with no dignity and no respect, and were told they had to work in the fields to pick cotton and work in the house to ensure the comfort of their slave masters? How would they felt if they were told they had no rights to be educated, no right to worship, no rights, period? Unless your ancestors have walked a mile in my ancestors' shoes, then the display of this battle flag of the Confederacy waving over a federal highway are infringing on my First Amendment rights. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Mr. Lockett?
Good afternoon. I also live at 240 Rebel Road with the previous speaker in the acquired district. And thank you for the opportunity to speak about the issue of having a Confederate battle flag visible from I-95 in Stafford County. I believe at the heart of this issue involves that no sign or public symbol publicly undermines and misrepresents the core values that are associated with Stafford County, while at the same time ensuring First Amendment rights are protected. I recall the chair opened the previous meeting, that was Super Board's meeting that we had on this subject, with a pledge of allegiance to the flag of the United States of America. These are the core values that are embodied in that pledge. One nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Let's compare that to the core values and heritage represented by the Confederate battle flag that is visible on I-95 for all to see, and most important to this issue, associated with Stafford County. Destroy the Union the Founding Fathers fought so hard to build. The right to kidnap people from a foreign country and forcibly enslave them. Commit some of the most heinous atrocities human beings have committed against one another, and for more than a century deny them the opportunity to participate in the American dream. I served as a Marine for 24 years, proudly defending the United States flag, its core values, and rich heritage. I strongly believe that the Confederate battle flag has nothing in common with American core values. Words and symbols have meaning. Which of these two flags and the core values they present does the board want the thousands of cars that travel on I-95 each day to associate with Stafford County? Only the Board of Supervisors, as elected officials, can pass ordinances to ensure that any signs or flags that are displayed on private property have dimensions which restrict their view to the immediate property to protect individual First Amendment rights, while not trampling on others' First Amendment rights that do not share these views. I read an article in an earlier Board of Supervisor meeting that the board chair said that there's nothing the board owners can do from flying this flag that is on private property. I challenge the board to revisit this, and instead of saying what can't be done, look to passing ordinances that limit flag and sign dimensions so individual First Amendment rights are protected, but do not make a public statement that is contrary to Stafford County core values.
Thank you for your service, and thank you, Mr. Lockett. Mr. Aftabian Khan, or John Khan.
Good afternoon, Board of Supervisors. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak. My name is Aftab John Khan. I'm the president of All Muslim Association of America, and I live in Springfield, 6164 Deer Ridge Trail, Springfield, Virginia. But we do have constituents who reside in Stafford County. If you could raise hands. So if I can begin, oh, actually, I already began. We've been established in the Stafford County since 1989. We have a cemetery that has been in operation as of 1996 on Brook Road. We're here basically to discuss the saturation of existing land, and we were purchasing a land on 1508 Garrisonville Road. And we contacted the county staff and learned the 1508 Garrisonville Road was by right, it was suited for cemetery. As a result, we went ahead and acquired the property in May of 2015. Over the next year, we paid off the loan as a nonprofit. We work on donations, so as the donations came in, and we paid off the loan. And then we started the process for zoning or establishing the cemetery. At that time, we consulted an attorney in April of 2017, and we learned that county had adopted a tax amendment establishing a 900-foot setback. That pretty much meant that any wells that we had on the property and that setback pretty much eliminated all usage of that particular land, the 45 acres that we purchased. So hence why I'm here in front of you guys to discuss what we can do to bring up the situation to a discussion so we can actually intellectually discuss how did the county come up with a 900-foot setback. And the 900-foot setback under the ordinance is inconsistent with exceeds the authority given by counties and under state law. The 900-foot provision under state law applies only for cities, towns, and water companies, and then only for municipal wells. The only setback state law provision pertaining to the county's distance from residence, which is 250 feet. The 250-yard provision does not apply due to the location of highway between the residence and proposed cemetery. The cited World Health Organization study recommends that no burial shall be made within 250 feet.
I'll give you a few more minutes because you got a slow start, or a few more seconds.
Sorry about that, thank you. Within 250 feet or 250 meters of any well, borehole, or spring from which potable water supply is drawn, but only 30 meters from any other spring or water course, i.e. a quiet creek. This recommendation has no applicability to the 900-foot setback established extended from the south of Aquia Creek. To the extent it is inapplicable to well location on properties on south side of the Garrisonville Road, including the homes of planning commissioner, it exceeds the state authority. In any case, new caskets technology rendering obsolete even the recommendation from the World Health Organization as a distance from well.
Thank you, Mr. Khan. We're going to take this up as a discussion item later. You'll have an opportunity, I'm sure, or we will be talking about this, and you may find more conversation.
Thank you so much.
Mary Ann Kane. After Ms. Kane is Steve Aycock and Jean Sellers. After that.
Good afternoon, and thank you for having this meeting. My name is Mary Ann Kane. I live at 19 Cardinal Drive in the Hartwood District. I am also a small business owner with my husband in the Garrisonville District. I'm here to talk about the flag. When the flag first appeared, I can remember how angry, how embarrassed, how sad I was when I saw it. It took me a long time to figure out how it happened in Stafford County, how the county I moved to from Northern Virginia somehow miraculously put up a Confederate flag, because my first impression was the county put it up because it was so large, so tall, and so visible from I-95. As I said, it took me a while to find out that it was a group of people who named flaggers who leased property from a private individual. For a while, we tried to figure out ways that we could address having this flag put on that property, and everything we were always told was that it's private property, there's nothing can be done. I do believe that there is something that can be done, that it is the responsibility of the Board of Supervisors and the county attorney to explore the options that are available, whether it be a height ordinance, whether it be anything. The flag does not represent my views. It does not represent any views of anyone I know. It does not represent Stafford County. And it's disingenuous for people to pretend that it's about heritage, because it's not. I think given our current state of affairs in the world today, I think it's pretty clear there is a direct meaning behind that flag that is not about love, about acceptance, about peacefulness. And I would implore that you do look at some way to manage the flag, either by passing an ordinance for height, whether you put up something else that says this is not what we believe, however you handle it. But it does say to the people who drive up and down 95, Stafford County, because I believe that there is a Stafford County, welcome to Stafford County sign right before that flag when you're coming up the highway. And so people don't know that it's on private property. People cannot believe that it would be on private property. So I think we do need to do something as a community to express that that does not represent Stafford County.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Steve? I couldn't see you hide behind that flag there.
That's unusual for people not to see me. I'm Steve Aycock. I live at 7 Baldwin Drive in the Hartwood District. I appreciate all the county has done to remember our role in the Civil War Park, the mural in the other building, the things that happened in Cannon Ridge, visit of Abraham Lincoln, and so forth. However, I do not think this flag represents Stafford County, and I think we can do something to say that this flag does not represent Stafford County by by limiting the height, by limiting the size, by putting up a sign or a billboard, something that indicates this flag does not represent us. My family was at Jamestown. Richard Pace is an ancestor. He was one of the original founders, or one of the people that originally was at Jamestown, and my family's been in the South all this time, fought probably on both sides of the great unpleasantness that happened in 1860s. But the flag represents pain and grief. It causes pain and grief to people that I care about. It causes pain to me when I see it, because it does whatever we say that it represents, whatever it symbolizes. Its symbolism is very apparent. It's not what we say it is, it's what it is, and it represents hate. This flag was not even the flag of the Confederate States. The Stars and Bars was the flag that the Confederate States adopted. This was the battle flag. This is Robert E. Lee's flag. But it was not really nothing. It wasn't represented until Strom Thurmond's campaign in 1948, which was all about white supremacy and segregation. It became popular after Brown versus Board of Education. It became more popular in the civil rights when the civil rights movement gained credence and moved forward. It was a symbol of white supremacy, and it still is. It should be. We should do something. You should do something to say this is not what Stafford County is about, because it's not what we're about. We're about Southern hospitality. We're about welcoming people. And this flag and the prominence that it plays on I-95 sends the wrong message to people that pass through our area. Like Kim said, it hurts us. It hurts our business. It hurts people when they see something that represents hate and superiority of one group of people over another group of people. So I encourage you to do something. Do something that you can do. You can find whether you can limit the size of flagpoles on private property, or you can do something to put up a sign saying this is not what we're about. Because you've already said this is not what we're about. Through the Civil War Park, through the mural, and through other things. I thank you for considering this and look forward to hearing your response.
Thank you, sir. And Mr. Sellers. Esteemed father of one of our own.
Thank you. Thank you for letting me come before you and talk about the Confederate flag. So I don't envy any one of you.
Oh, name and
guys
address,
sitting-
please, even though we know.
Gene Sellers, 1 Bankston Court, Stafford, Virginia.
Thank you, sir.
I live in the Garrisonville district. And again, thank you for letting me come this afternoon to talk about the Confederate flag. I don't envy you guys at all, because this is not an issue that's going to go away. But I am going to offer an option that isn't about First Amendment rights. So I'm a private property owner here in Stafford County, and I urge you to reconsider the personal property permit that was submitted to allow this flag to go up. It was submitted not as a personal property use. It was submitted as a commercial use. And so it needs to be considered as a commercial use, not as a personal property use. And we know that because the Confederate flaggers have said that they paid the property owner to erect that flag. And I don't envy you in taking this up, because everybody's seen Charlottesville. Nobody wants another Charlottesville, right? We don't want it here in Stafford County. But I'm going to ask you to talk, to think a little bit about courage. So what's it going to take for you guys to reconsider that personal property permit and to potentially suspend it? Now, I am Laura's dad, and when she was elected, right, she was the youngest supervisor ever elected in the history of the Commonwealth, male or female. She was the youngest female ever elected in the history of the Commonwealth. And the very first issue you guys asked her to take a vote on was issued here as a resolution by the Speaker of the House of Delegates to decouple Medicaid expansion from the budget. Now, when it was presented, he asked for a unanimous vote on it. And as a body, you guys deliberated, and she voted for the resolution. So that took a lot of courage, because she knew that there were going to be ramifications. But the reason she took that vote is because it was the right thing to do. And what happened after that? I was the newly elected chair of the Stafford Democratic Committee, and I was asked to resign, and I did. Laura, not only a past chair of the Stafford Democratic Committee, but she was asked to resign because we opposed an issue that the governor had put forward, the newly elected governor of the Commonwealth. Right? So that took a lot of courage, and there were ramifications. So what I'm asking you to do today is reconsider the permit. It's not a personal use, property use permit. It's a commercial permit. It needs to be reconsidered, reissued as a commercial use permit, and I think under your guys' guidelines, it wouldn't be allowed. If Target wanted to put a flag on that property, you guys wouldn't allow Target to put a flag on that property. If Walmart wanted to put a flag on that property, you wouldn't allow it. If Chili's wanted to put a flag on that property, you wouldn't allow it. And if Virginia Barbecue wanted to put a pig on that flag, you guys wouldn't allow it. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Jossie, you're up. Ms. Josie, and then Judy Love, and then Pam Lightfoot.
Patricia Joshi, 17 Ledwell Lane, 22554, in the Rock Hill District, Miss Mallory's district. I would like to just also clarify, Mr. Sellers, the permit holder is actually not the property owner, okay? The person who applied for that permit does not own the property. The board can do something right now. The board can implement an ordinance that limits the height of the flagpole, limits the size of the flag. There's a published United States Court of Appeals for the Fourth Circuit. Virginia's part of the Fourth Circuit, coming out of the state of North Carolina, American Legion Post 7 versus the city of Durham. This entire opinion goes through the whole free speech analysis. And the court, the United States Court of Appeals from the Fourth Circuit, concludes that we find that the city's flag size restrictions reasonably limit the time, place, and manner of speech in a fashion that preserves ample alternative avenues for communication and is supported by the city's substantial aesthetic interests. And that's what we're talking about here, is the aesthetic interest of Stafford County. Do we want, I would love to see a 90-foot rainbow flag. I would love to see a 90-foot Black Lives Matter flag, but would the county want to see those flags 90-foot flying everywhere? It's not about free speech when you're talking about limiting the size of the flagpole. So implement that ordinance today. You can do that today. I'll give you this case. The city of Chesapeake implemented an ordinance, and I'll give you their ordinance. No flagpole may exceed 35 feet in height, measured from the grade of the lot, unless a conditional use permit is obtained through the planning department. you can implement that ordinance without violating anyone's free speech. There's case law that supports that. So to say that it's a matter of free speech, it's not, Mr. Mildy. This is not a Republican or a Democratic issue. It's a matter of economic, psychological, and aesthetic benefit to our community. Saying it bothers you is not enough. As a leader in this county, it is incumbent upon you to act. Do something. Ask your county attorney to write this ordinance. Ask your county attorney to find a way to get that Confederate flag lowered instead of just saying you can do nothing. I thank Laura Sellers for being in the forefront and getting the ball rolling on this. And she's up for re-election, and I say that she's doing her job right now. Enact the ordinance. You can do something. I also have a
Thank you,
letter.
Ms. Oshie. You may hand that to the clerk. If you don't
And
mind.
I'm finished with my time?
Yes,
Okay,
you
fine.
are.
So, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
And I hope you do something.
Judy Love. Hi, Ms. Love.
Hi.
And then after you is Mrs. Lightfoot.
Pardon me?
After you is Miss Lightfoot, wherever she may be.
Okay. Judy Love, Fredericksburg, 22405. Sadly, we are currently involved in an emotional civil war in our sharply divided nation. It's no longer actual physical war, South against North, yet emotions and attitudes keep it alive and are continuing to injure us all. I'm appalled at the reluctance to let go of the 1800s Civil War and shocked to see the support of human slavery that the Civil War was fought about. I'm horrified at the white supremacist mindset that was literally marching with Confederate and Nazi flags together and tiki torches. I've gotten so I see a tiki torch when I walk in the grocery store and I jump. And dreadful racist chants creating violence in this state. My beautiful Virginia now has a national reputation for that shameful Charlottesville catastrophe. We must take strong steps to change that so-called historical heritage of shame. In Stafford County, we can begin by finding ways to stop that huge Confederate flag from being the white supremacy welcome to our county and Fredericksburg. The fallacy of white supremacy is clear to anyone who chooses to see that we all wear a rainbow of many variations of colors of skin. DNA information is currently surprising many who dare to check it out with what a mixture of human bloods we all are. I've been involved in politics at the California and Washington state legislatures and as a Washington state jail inspector. After many meetings with correctional professionals and the public, I wrote new RCWs, which is Revised Code of Washington. I was also a parole officer enforcing the law. However, I had to enforce different laws for the same crime depending on when the individual committed that crime. My point here is that state and federal and local laws do change constantly. We humans have created our system of man-made laws, and therefore we can and must change our laws to heal the serious mistakes of our past, our history. Support for slavery and racism have been, and still are, our serious mistakes. And so I'm asking you as our local Board of Supervisors to search for the ways you can take action and to change the current laws or policies, procedures, if necessary, to permit this huge I-95 Confederate flag. This inanimate object defiles our precious constitutional right of free speech. It screams that white supremacy and the support of slavery and racism, as demonstrated in Seaville, are alive and operating and actively supported in Stafford County. Stafford County needs to find ways to prevent this and to send a more accurate message for all of us. What represents what decent, compassionate, humane, modern county residents demand in 2017 and forward. We can only learn from our past. We can't choose to change it, except for how we choose to focus on it. We can definitely choose to create a better future together or not.
Thank you, Ms. Love.
Thank you.
All right, Mrs. Lightfoot. And after Ms. Lightfoot is Sarah McClelland, and then Susan Cozier. Thank you for that pronunciation.
Good afternoon to the board. This is the first time I've addressed you, so I'm sure I'll make some faux pas. But anyway, I commend my fellow Staffordites for stepping up and
Oh, name and
speaking-
address, please,
Oh,
Ms.
I'm sorry.
Lightfoot.
17 Starrington Court, near the Porter Library. Commend my fellow Staffordites and others who have come to the board and addressed a number of things. I'm a parent, and my kids have gone to the schools, but if Haim needs a thing, she's right. You know, Ford got one, smack bam. So obviously that's a problem right there. I also am originally from New Orleans and am used to seeing the Lee statue and Lee Circle and the other statues of the Confederate people that they've posted everywhere, which means I'm also familiar with David Duke and all the ugliness from Louisiana, several decades of that. I'm also Jewish, so I feel the pain for when the neo-Nazis take up the Confederate flag and everybody hides behind it thinking they've got their right for heritage and stuff like that. It's terrible, and I think a few people have addressed the heritage versus slavery and hate issue. One thing, and I'm also a member of the American Legion and the VFW and the Jewish War Veterans, and I'm still serving in military status. My kids went through the Stafford County schools, and this is something that continually tried to make sure the kids are, if they're exposed to some of the stuff in their school stuff, that things are explained and things are corrected, because I don't want my children to have gone through and think highly of any of this stuff because of the background of it. What I was interested in hearing about the commercial use permit, and being with the federal government, the judicial branch for some years before I retired, the Fourth Circuit is that's the federal court of appeals so I'm encouraged to look at it. One thing when I started looking at this, I'm also a member of the NAACP for Stafford County, and also had been when I was younger. This group has Facebook page, Twitter account. They have, and does anybody know how many flags they have flying in Virginia? 26. And they lately posted that they understand either the state or somebody is trying to limit their stuff, so they're in a big rush, and send them money, everybody on their Facebook page, to put up more flags before they're stopped. And so this is a monster problem. And I had no scope of the breadth of it. And frankly, if your citizens are proposing legal options for the size of the flag and other things and changing the permit and stuff like that, I would ask that Stafford County take the leadership, maybe for the whole state, for other counties who have been, and I'll use the word inflicted, with these flags put up over other federal interstates and other areas. Anyway, thank you very much.
Thank you, ma'am, and thank you for your service. Ms. McClellan?
Hi, my name's Sarah McClellan. I live at 22 Enchanted Oak Drive, 22405. I'm here with my beautiful daughter, Molly, who is taking civics this year in 7th grade. I don't have anything planned. I just wanted to sort of emphasize some words that I heard listening to everybody behind me speaking. I heard the word disingenuous, and I heard the word courage. I really believe that this idea that what Mr. Mildy said, we can't do anything, it's a First Amendment issue, is a disingenuous statement, with all due respect. It's manipulative. We all know that you could do something if you wanted to. The question is, will you? I don't think Mr. Mildy is motivated to do so. I think Mr. Mildy really believes in his white Southern heritage, and he's entitled to his belief. I'm not sure that he's entitled to his belief 90 feet above 95. I think that you can protect free speech and lower the flag simultaneously. I don't think those things are mutually exclusive. As we've heard, the permit, the ordinances, the legalities, all of you are the experts on that, certainly not I. I'm just a parent of a 7th grader who has to explain, why do we have this symbol of hate flying over our county? Why do we have that? What I'd like to say to you on the record, Mr. Chairman, is that your white Southern heritage is really a symbol of slavery, Jim Crow, segregation, racism, and a whole world of hurt. The whole world of hurt stands for mothers being separated from their children when they were sold. That's where we get the expression sold down the river from. That's what that world of hurt is all about. People not having the opportunities to be the Americans that they are because of segregation and the Jim Crow laws of the 50s and 60s. That's the world of hurt that we're talking about. So when I'm asking this board, please find a way in your hearts and in the law to lower the flag. It's not a free speech issue. We all know that. We're not in kindergarten. We know that that is a way to hide what you want to do, which is to keep that flag. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. McClellan. And my last speaker card is Ms. Kozia.
Good afternoon. My name is Susan Cozier, and I live at 209 Taylor Street in the George Washington District. Since I was last here 2 weeks ago, I've spent a number of hours driving around just the George Washington District, where I live, trying to find Confederate flags. I've gone to extremely rural parts of the district and more populated near the city. I've been in what I assume are very rich areas and very poor areas. How many Confederate flags would you think that I have spotted in my travels? You might be surprised. I found 5. 5 Confederate flags at 409 Ferry Road, 2 Blair Road, 46 Salvington, 99 Jet, and 2 Compton. Now, I've never been too good at math, but I'm going to generously assume that each of these homes has a family of 4 to 6 people. So at most of my travels, I've been able to dig up 30 people who are passionate enough about this to fly the flag over their home. And I say near or over because one house has theirs off in the bushes and one is flying theirs off the porch in their backyard. So then I wondered how many African Americans live in the district. I checked the most recent census numbers, which are now 7 years old, and the answer is almost 1,600. So this board is potentially allowing the interests of 30 people to dictate how the county will respond to the symbol of bigotry, racism, and hatred, by which I mean the 95 flag, in the face of potentially 1,600 people who live in or near the flag in fear of what it symbolizes. I've unscientifically polled a number of African Americans in our area about what they feel about the flag, and they use words like intimidation and fear. That's not what my Stafford County is about. I know 4 of you have elections coming up this fall, and perhaps you've heard since the last election, there's a big get out the vote movement. Well, we're not targeting those 30 people, I can guarantee you. We're targeting those 1,600 people to come on out and vote. That's not a chance I'd be willing to take if I were any one of the 4 of you. This is not about property rights or telling Mr. Cash what he can or cannot do. If he wants to join those other 5 families for displaying the flag for his own enjoyment, so be it. But as Patty said, the Fourth Circuit Court of Appeals found that flagpole height limitations can be enacted and do not infringe upon the freedom of speech. I hope that I'm not going to be back here in 2 weeks. I'm in Alice myself. I'm losing 4 hours of work, $50 today. And I really would like to get back to work and back to my life, but I will see you in 2 weeks if I have to. Thank you.
That's my last speaker card. Would anyone else in the audience like to speak? Hi, Mr. Pelt. Are you going to give us some real legal advice?
Good afternoon. Jason Pelt, I live at 1 Rolling Brook. First, I want to start by publicly thanking Mr. Snellings for your very kind words at the last meeting. I heard them not live because I had to leave, go back to the office, but I heard them online, and I really do appreciate those words. And I believe wholeheartedly that you, and I also see that we have Mr. Chichester in the room today, are working very diligently to correct those bricks. And I very much look forward to joining you on the rededication on Veterans Day, so I really do appreciate that. But that actually is not why I came today. I actually came to speak in support, not of a flag, but in support of the United States Constitution and freedom of speech. So I rise today in support of the First Amendment, and I will defend, as much as I can, the right of a private citizen to display whatever flag he wants. It's not about the flag, and it's not about the message. So some people say, well, what if it's a Confederate battle flag? What if it was a Gadsden flag? What if it was a Japanese Imperial battle flag? What if it was an Antifa flag or a Black Lives Matter flag or a rainbow unity flag? It's not about the message. It's about the ability of a private citizen to display that message. It's protected in the First Amendment of the Constitution, which reads the Congress or Stafford Board of Supervisors shall make no law respecting the establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof or abridging the freedom of speech or the press or the right of the people to peacefully assemble. So in support of that, I give you the case of United States versus Ekman. Now, Ekman was a case that struck down a flag burning law. In 1989, Congress passed the Flag Protection Act. It criminalized the conduct of anyone who knowingly mutilates or defaces a United States flag. The government struck down that, and it said the government's action in this case is an attempt to regulate free speech. And such, it will be subject to the most stringent scrutiny. Now, this means in order for the government action to be upheld, the government must show that the action is necessary to serve, and the lawyers in the group will understand this, a compelling governmental interest. So I'm sure the county attorney has talked about what a compelling governmental interest is, and also it has to be narrowly drawn to achieve that end. The court goes on to say, while flag desecration, like ethnic and religious insults, vulgar repudiations of the draft, and offensive caricatures are deeply offensive, the government may not prohibit expression of an idea simply because the society finds the idea to be offensive or disagreeable. That's the whole idea of the First Amendment. It protects somebody who you don't agree with. For that, I'm asking this board to protect that, protect the Constitution, and protect freedom of speech. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Counselor. Anyone else like to speak? You may come up if you haven't already done so. You might have to get in order with one another, but first come, first serve, I suppose. There you go.
Good afternoon. Rachel Campbell, Stafford County resident, 22556. I'm back again. I thank you all for being the board you are. I just ask that you look within yourself to ask yourself why you are part of that board. Is it to flaunt your resume? Is it to make the county better, to make the people better, or is it very personal? Again, I say I am an original Staffordian. We cannot rewrite history, but we can write history, and we can correct wrongs. Being raised in this county, I was here when the schools were segregated. The county did something about it. Doretha Montague and Cynthia Montague are my first cousins. They were the first ones to integrate the schools. I was here when there was a Confederate flag in the courtroom of Judge Scott. He was offended. Eventually, that flag got removed from his courtroom. This is no different. It's offensive. I'm not telling you to take the flag down. I'm saying lower the flag. I am not buying into, oops, we missed that one. I'm not buying that. If a exception permit had to be gotten and obtained, I'm sure you wanted to know what was going on at poll. Not just that it was a flag, but what kind of flag, because it was an exception. So you know the details. You cannot rewrite history, but you can correct. It's an error. And we are asking you to do something about it. It's offensive to me. I'm not asking him to take it down. I'm asking that it be lowered. If he had to get an exception permit, that tells you a lot right there. I don't know who made the approval, but I'm not buying into, oops, it was a mistake. No, you all had to know, whoever was in charge had to know every little detail of what was going on at poll. So I'm not buying it. All we want is to correct the wrong. Stafford has become progressive. Let's continue to be progressive. When I was raised here, there were less than 6 schools total in the county. Not 30. We are progressive. Let's be progressive in area facet and area of this county. Let's broaden our minds. Let's get rid of our little personal feelings, and let's look what's best for the people, not a person, but for the people of the county. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. I believe this young woman was, oh, sorry about that. She was before you, but if you want to get in front of her, you may.
Sorry. And I don't really have anything personally prepared,
Just
but.
state with your name
Oh,
and
I'm
address,
sorry,
please.
Falmouth and Visha Wright. My name is Visha Wright, Falmouth 22405. I had a few things that I was going to say, and then listening, there are a few things I want to say. And so I guess I'll start with what I started with last time. What was the Confederate War about? It was about the opposition of slavery. You know, it was about keeping people enslaved, keeping another group of people that, and someone thought they were, you know, were higher than someone else. I don't know. Anyway, also, just to say, what is love? Love is a person or thing that one loves. It's an intense feeling of deep affection. So I just made this, and I'm portraying this as my flag today. This flag, you would normally think of love, but today I want to just say that as I stand and hold this flag, I'm portraying white hate, hating someone that's white. And I don't hate white people. I love everybody, and I truly love everyone because that's what I'm taught to do. That's how I grew up. You're supposed to love. I don't like everybody, but I love everybody. I'm just telling you the truth. But right now, as I stand and hold this up, this is what this portrays. And so, you know, and then I heard someone say that the guy who actually has the flag thinks of black people as worthless. I know I'm not worthless, and thank God that, you know, I'm confident and I know who I am. But if I saw someone waving his flag and I knew what, you know, that person, you know, and I knew what they said about that, then I may think that I'm worthless. It may decrease my confidence. And so also I'll think of, let's think about the hurricane, Hurricane Irma, Hurricane Maria, Hurricane Harvey. They're white, they're black, they're Asian, they're Latino, people that have been affected by this. And in this devastation, it's not just one race. It's not just one people. It's everybody that's had to bond together. And that's what life, that's what humanity is about. Again, I think I said last time, we're all what, Homo sapiens? We're one species. We're all people. There's only one difference. And I have to repeat it just to remind, there's only one difference. At night, I breathe, I sleep, you know, in the morning I wake up. My heart's beating. You know, when I die, my breath leaks out of my body. So why are we different? What makes, I'm not saying, I agree that the flag should be lowered at least, or even taken down, or even not even allowed to be waved in Stafford County, because I know I rode by someone the other day and they had 2 flags, 2 Confederate flags on the back of that truck. And it brought a little anxiety to me because I'm like, how can people be so harsh and so unthoughtful?
Thank you, ma'am.
Have a nice day. This means love. That's a deception.
Yes. My name is Gregory Bundrick. I'm at 407 Forbes. I keep asking myself, how did a symbol of hate and civil war against our country suddenly appear in Falmouth? Every month in this chamber, we pledge allegiance to our flag. Our brave deputies are wearing their flag on their uniforms. I want to honor them. This issue has brought pain and suffering to our community. You must hear the pain in the people behind me. This issue has not brought credit to our county. It has brought suffering. What protections are in place that this will never happen again? Mr. Mildy, you started the meeting off with comments about campaign signs and campaign signs not beautifying our county. And you have allowed a Confederate flag in Falmouth? What do we need to heal? I want to give credit to the Sellers family. They have offered many comments. I want to suggest the comments from Ms. Choshi as possible solutions. We do need a multicultural center. I was grieved that that issue was brought forward earlier and the board did not pursue that. The supervisors individually did not pursue that. I want accountability. How did this happen? How will this not happen again? We are trying to help. Suggestions have been offered. I would like to see the board express their individual positions on this matter, and I would like to see this body representing this county declare a position. Do we really pledge allegiance to our flag?
Thank you, sir. Is there anyone else who would like to address the board before I close the public hearings? Going once, anyone? Come on, you want to.
Martha Newton, Falmouth, Virginia, Hartwood District. I just want to say that Stafford County was built on history. And if you look at the history of Stafford County, and if you look at the history of the Stafford Courthouse, the people carrying the battle flag of the Confederacy did not burn the Stafford Courthouse and get rid of all the records. So when people come to this county looking for genealogy history and trying to find who their ancestors were, this county was a burn county. And it didn't happen by the Confederates. And you can't find your relatives that you're looking for because it was a burned courthouse. And I understand that people that come from other countries are brought here that have their courthouses and their records have been destroyed. They learn how to bring things forward because of what Stafford County has learned to do since all their records were destroyed. It's a flag. My relatives fought for it, but it's just part of the history. You cannot erase history. It's what you have history. Everybody in this room has history. As my husband would say, I'm a Yankee because I came from Maryland. But I didn't choose where I wanted to be raised. But thank you, and I know you will do what you need to do, but everybody has a right to their own opinion.
Thank you, Ms. Newton. All right, is that really the last one? All right, I will close the public comment section, or public presentations by the public, and move on to committee reports and presentations by board members.
Ms. Baumke.
First, I just wanted to start off by saying I attended the legislative meeting that we had, the joint meeting with the school board with Supervisors Seller, Maurer, and Thomas. It was a very productive meeting, and I'm glad that my colleagues got that started very early. Also want to thank my colleagues that attended the RCASA Gala with me. I'm on the RCASA board, and that stands for Rappahannock Council Against Sexual Assault. And that was a very successful fundraiser, and we raised money for people that are affected by sexual assault. Last night, we had the GWRC and FAMPO meetings. We discussed the express lanes. There's a meeting Monday night at Stafford High School from 6 to 8. If you have any interest on the express lanes that are be coming down to exit 133, this would be the meeting for you to attend. You can walk around and look at all the different charts, and then there's a part where VDOT will speak probably around 7 o'clock. Last night at the FAMPO meeting, we talked about some of the Commonwealth Transportation Board's changes that they have made to the SMART scale process, which is the allocation of the transportation dollars in the state of Virginia. We're not pleased with all the recommendations, and as FAMPO, as a committee, we're going to be sending a letter to them. And just to remind you, in the last SMART scale round, we had $909 billion in projects in the Commonwealth of Virginia for $1 billion of money. So the last thing that we formed in light of those numbers last night is we actually formed a committee to talk about, meet with our senators, meet with other people in Washington to figure out how can we move the jobs to down here. Because as we know, we can't build enough northbound lanes for all the people that are going to be moving here over the next 15, 20 years. So I'll bring you more information on that as it becomes available. And that's all I have, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Mr. Cavalier.
I'll be brief in the interest of time. I just wanted to say that we had a big Oktoberfest celebration last Saturday at Quantico Corporate Center. It was sponsored by some local microbreweries and wineries, and over 2,000 people attended. It was a huge success, had bands and other vendors, and I'm hoping it becomes an annual event here in Stafford County. I also attended the ribbon cutting for the new Women's Imaging Center, and that's on Woodstream Boulevard. It's part of the medical imaging practice there, and they've already opened the doors and have had a great start. So that concludes my report. Thank you.
Mrs. Maurer.
I attended the Ratio Group grand opening, which is a tech fusion center in Fredericksburg, kind of an interesting mix of technology and investors coming together. Also, at the Joint Legislative Committee meeting with the school board, as a report to my fellow board members, that was actually very productive. And there are a number of issues that the school board has that would help us in our budget difficulties that we are having, and we will be bringing those issues hopefully to the board in the October timeframe for as we rack and stack our priorities as a group. But it was wonderful to get them together with our lobbyists. It further advances the shared services that I am incredibly passionate about and that we as two bodies have been working towards. Also met with the county auditor, looking forward to seeing that audit report, and attended the leadership prayer breakfast with a number of my colleagues here. It was a wonderful message that we received that day, and I appreciate them doing that every year. And finally, well, two more things. Meg and I met with the Ahmadiyya Muslim Women's Association. They have an annual event that not an event, but they get together with local, state, and national leaders all across the country to promote peace between the Muslim community and the rest of the nation. And it was very eye-opening. It was wonderful, and I appreciate Ms. Baumke attending that with me. It was, and they have a coffee and what was it? Coffee and cake at Porter Library, where they talk. They interact with the community on a regular basis if you have any questions. And so I'll be posting the dates and the times in which they are going to be having those coffee and cake sessions on my Facebook page. And last item is on the Finance and Budget Committee. We have an item on our consent agenda, and that's the budget calendar. We recommend it from the Finance and Budget Committee unanimously. And it is extremely interesting if you look at the calendar of events that are on there. Number one, we're going to be talking as a group in November about potential financial models in which we approach the financing of our public schools. I know the schools have put forward a financial sharing arrangement that they're proposing, and we're gonna have that discussion to maybe look at revenue stabilization or even cost-sharing stabilization. So we'll see that in November, and the reason that's so important is that we're going to be inviting the public, and we're having these talks long before the budget gets drafted. And there are a number of budget meetings you'll see in this budget calendar that we're going to be having in November, in December, January, and March. So we're having these discussions long before the budget gets presented. And so the public can also, participate in how we're looking at formulating the budget as we move into the next phase. And then lastly, what you'll see in that budget calendar is we're going to be looking at it from a 5-year perspective. So we're going to be putting together a 5-year budget model and looking at how future costs and future challenges that we see in every department and organization that Stafford County has, how that's going to impact us so we can prepare better and be more informed both as a body and as the public. That concludes my report, Mr. Chairman. Thank you very much.
Thank you, ma'am.
Ms. Sellers?
Thank you, ma'am. A lot of it was covered, but, so Quick's met a couple of times. I think we've sent out a press release, and I don't know if I've reported on it here, but we have parted ways with our executive director, and we have hired an interim director, or brought on an interim director voluntarily, who is Mr. Cavalier. So we have put him to work in his retirement as we look for a new executive director. I think the thing that was missed on the FAMPO agenda was the Transportation Authority. So Mr. Kelly from the city has asked that we put it on our agenda and be prepared to speak about it at the next FAMPO meeting. So, Mr. Chairman, I would like to put that on the agenda for next month, and that will be time constraints, so we'll have to do something about that, because FAMPO's looking for, I guess he wants a response by November. So he wants to know how we feel about the Transportation Authority, so in the next 2 meetings, we're going to need to start talking about that. Public safety is met. Good things are happening in this county. So every month now, we're hearing the sheriff talk about how compression pay has kept folks here in the sheriff's department, how more staffing, so we are seeing results from that. Fire and rescue is having some great discussions. If you remember a year ago, things weren't really great. We were having some fights with the volunteer units, and it seems that we're making progress on that as well. They're at the table. Next meeting, we're going to have a discussion on the budget, the operations and training budget for our volunteer staffs, and looking at how we've done it in the past and how we're going to do it in the future. For those that don't know, we do have a combined system. And speaking of history, we would like to maintain that combined system moving forward. So as we increase our career staff, our paid staff, we want to make sure that we keep the integrity of what was there to begin with in the volunteers. We also put a recommendation for 3 new ambulances, which is funded in the CIP. Mr. Chairman, I'd also like to pull item number 9. And just for a point of clarification on the light in front of Colonial Forge, that didn't happen overnight. It took several years to get to where we were. So we are working on Telegraph Road. But I just don't want people to think that it just all of a sudden popped up out of nowhere and we had this light. It took several years and lots of meetings with VDOT, with staff, and figuring out everything. And finally, we were able to get it. So just some clarification gives people some expectation management of how long some of these things cost. Thanks.
Mr. Snellings?
Thank you, Madam Clerk. I'd like to pull item number 8 from consent.
Got it.
As most of you know, I'm a lifelong resident of Stafford County. As a matter of fact, my family's been here since the founding of the county. And it really disturbs me when people come to the microphone quoting history, and it really isn't accurate. I'm not going to take the time to give you a history lesson this afternoon because we don't have that time. But the gentleman that made the statements, I would like for him to call me so I can set him straight on the history of the people that fought in the Civil War from Stafford County. It's pretty enlightening. My number's on the webpage. You can contact me there. You can contact me via email. I'd be glad to meet with you for coffee, because I definitely want to straighten that out. Because believe me when I tell you, many of the things you said were not true. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Thomas?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I met with the Stafford County Farm Bureau. Not sure that most citizens know, but farming and forestry is still the largest sector of our economy. And there was 160 people there, so I'm proud to report that farming is still alive and well in Stafford County. It's a wonderful thing, and they always ask me to make sure to mention that if you see a tractor on the side of the road, please try not to honk too hard, and just realize that they have to share the road with us, and they're not out there unless they need to be. So they wanted me to pass that on to the citizens. The second thing, we had a VRE meeting. The staff presented their preliminary budget. This is the very, very beginning of the process. The 3% subsidy increase, which has kind of been an every other year approach to funding, and currently there's about a $1.2 million deficit. But at this point, the VRE board will send them to the commissions, and also the county staffs will all get together, and usually by the time it comes back, the deficit is figured out, and then the board will vote on that later in the year. The third thing, I wanted to congratulate the Chamber of Commerce. Susan Spears is doing an excellent job down there, and they had an event on civility, and it was very well attended. I think there was probably 65 people there, if I'm counting correctly. And it was a very engaging conversation, and I think it's going to be the tip of the iceberg. I'm pretty sure there's going to be some follow-up events. So if you see those on the Chamber website and all the marketing they do, I would highly encourage you to attend another one. It was a wonderful event. Fourth thing, Supervisor Baumke and I did meet with the Multicultural Coalition, but I think I'll probably save that update until item number 18. And had a really interesting opportunity at the Yankees in Falmouth event. We unveiled a Civil War trail sign, and it was for what we consider one of Stafford County's bravest sons, Mr. Moncure Conway. And at a time where it was very difficult and a very difficult location, he actually helped 31 of his father's escaped slaves escape to Ohio and establish a colony. So we unveiled a sign there, and it's very heartwarming to go see that positive part of history. So I would encourage everybody to take advantage and get down there and see it if you can. That's my report, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
And Mr. Milday?
I attended many of the meetings you've just heard reference. The FAMPO meeting, I will say, the Fredericksburg Area Metropolitan Planning Organization. I will wait to see what comes out of the idea of using FAMPO, which is a transportation body, to try to create jobs in Spotsylvania County, which is where it came from, the idea to try to reverse commute people. I was not a great supporter of the idea, especially out of that committee, but you're welcome to report on it. I think it's more of an economic development issue. The Virginia Railway Express, of course, I was there with Mr. Thomas. PRTC met. Also, Friends of the Rappahannock, several of us were at their biggest event they have every year, Crab Feast. They are an amazing group, but bipartisan, all people from all different sides of the political spectrum have supported that group, which has resulted in one of the most beautiful, pristine rivers running right through our area. Also, many of us, almost all of us, attended the Rappahannock Council Against Sexual Assault Unmasquerade Ball this last weekend, which is also a great organization that we support. And other than that, I'll just say it's tough sometimes to sit up here and listen to people talk about your character, and when I know they don't know me and they don't know my heart and name me by name. I'm a proud Virginian. I consider myself a proud Southerner, and if that offends somebody, I can't help you. But it doesn't mean you shouldn't ascribe hate to that. And if you do, that's also your problem. But we'll have this conversation a little bit later on in the evening or afternoon. Thank you. All right. I'm looking for. I'm going to go over to our loquacious county attorney. What do you have for us?
I have nothing right now. I will defer.
I
will
knew it.
defer any comments until I'm sure a later time in the evening.
Good to hear that. Mr. Foley, our county administrator.
Mr. Chairman, we have two items. One is a overview of the preliminary results of the year-end financial condition, and also a brief monthly construction report.
Maria.
Good afternoon, Chairman Milday, members of the board. I'm Maria Parat, Chief Financial Officer. And this afternoon, I'm happy to report the preliminary results for FY17 and also to thank the board for another year of positive, excellent financial stewardship. Revenues exceeded the budget while expenditures came in below budget. Policy-driven reserves are met, and our funds are available for the Capital Projects Reserve Fund.
Ma'am, would you mind keeping that flag furled and kind of still? It's making it, you're just going back and forth, and it would be more convenient if it weren't doing that. I love the flag, by the way. Just it's a tough spot for it. Thanks. Please.
Thank you. Most revenue line items did come in above budget, led primarily by property tax, specifically personal property, which was exceeded the budget largely due to new car sales volumes, the prices of new cars, and also the low depreciation rate on existing cars. In addition to property taxes, our economically driven taxes or consumer taxes also performed well, specifically meals tax, sales tax, and recordation taxes. Our permitting activity remains high to the point that over the next year or two, we may need to consider looking at our staffing levels in order to keep up with that activity. Ambulance fees were slightly below budget, and while there was a slight decrease in transports, that's mainly due to a one-time delay in receiving some of those revenues because of a new reporting system. On the expenditure side, we did come in under budget, which is good news. We had some savings in debt service, both for schools and county. Our vacancy savings was achieved. As you may recall, we budget $500,000 below what we would normally spend to account for our vacancy rates, and we did achieve that. Additionally, our health insurance came in under budget. This is the second year of our new plans and new contract, and so we continue to see that doing well for us. We continue to monitor this as we look to next year's budget. One area that exceeded the budget was in the Juvenile Detention Center, and that is caused by the number of residents from Stafford that are sent to that facility and the number of days that they're there. It's a regional facility, so this is our portion of that cost.
Ma'am?
Who's on the Juvenile Detention Center board? Do we have a member?
County Administrator, is that right? Are you on that?
Mr. Chairman, I'm not on that board, but I don't know the exact makeup right off the top of my head. We can get that information.
It's not Sheriff Decatur? Are you on the juvenile detention? Okay. Okay.
Yeah, maybe let's look at that. Let's put that on public safety for next month.
Sure, we can do
Figure out
that.
what's going on there.
The Sheriff's Office did have a savings in their budget, and as the board may recall, when the current year budget was adopted, there were some one-time items that were pulled out in anticipation of that and being able to fund it with those one-time funds from last year. Those are one-time costs associated with new positions, some startup costs for some new positions. Additionally, we did not fund their replacement vehicles at the levels that they felt was needed, and so the plan at the time was to use these funds to make that up. As we've been reporting all year, the Child Services Act costs continue to rise. This is still a concern. We're monitoring it very carefully, and we'll continue to report on that. Again, this is consistent with what we've told the board throughout the year. Another area we've been following is overtime in the Fire and Rescue Department, largely driven by the vacancies, as we need to use overtime to fill those time slots. There have been some positions added, and some money was added to the budget, but there are also vacancies now due to turnover, so we continue to monitor that, and we'll also continue to report that to the board as we move through this year as well. The department was able to offset the increased cost with savings in other areas, however. We appreciate them monitoring their budget so closely to be able to absorb it. Also within the Fire and Rescue Department, there was a portion of the funds earmarked for the volunteers that was left unspent, and staff will be working with that data and bringing forward a recommendation regarding a policy for those funds. I mentioned earlier that all of our reserves are at or above policy levels. As we increase our revenues, some of our reserves are tied to those revenue levels and so need to increase as well, such as our undesignated fund balance, which is 12% of revenues, and our revenue stabilization reserve. Additionally, there's some policy-driven reserves based on funding for items such as a purchase of development rights program. Our health insurance goes into the OPEB trust to reduce our liability for future payments for retirees. And also, we enacted a new courthouse fee, which we have $40,000 and some change now to start building up that fund as well.
What's that total for the courthouse projected to be right now?
The exact number is $41,774 from the court fees. But additionally,
I meant, what's the projected cost? I'm just making a...
the projected cost is, we're looking about $70 million.
$70 million, okay.
So, small drop in the bucket, but we have to start. The CIP does contemplate paying cash for design for the courthouse. That would be about a little over $4.5 million. And so we have the $41,000 to start with. We also did initiate a program, we're calling it Ramping Up, where we're taking future years' operating budgets and allocating it for this. And then those funds would be used for debt service when we do issue debt for the construction portion of it. But we're recommending that in addition to that, we include recordation tax that comes in above budget. Those are taxes that are collected by the clerk of circuit court, and it's somewhat cyclical, a little bit hard to predict because it's based on activity. Everything from real estate, will recordation, all of those types of things go through the court system and do pay a fee. That exceeded the budget by about $643,000 last year, and would recommend that that also be set aside for the new courthouse, as well as any debt service savings that we have. And last year, on the county side, there was over $23,000 in debt service savings. That's where either interest rates came in a little bit better than anticipated, or we sold some debt a little later in the year, and so we didn't have quite as much payment to make. Schools similarly have some large capital needs, and we anticipate needing to provide some new schools within the 10-year window of the CIP. And so we're recommending a few ways to increase cash for those projects as well. One would be including any meals tax above the budget in the school's capital projects reserve. And then the other would be to take school debt service savings and put that into the capital projects reserve as well. Those funds could then be used for some of these major school construction projects, perhaps to pay for their design as well with cash, similar to how we're doing the courthouse, or plan to do the courthouse. Taking all of the preceding into account, we do have positive results of operation, about 1%, a little over 1% of our budget. Departments have identified some one-time projects that have emerged that they would like to consider, and also through different committees and meetings, there have been some other issues that have come up the board may wish to address. As you know, 3% of our annual budget is set aside for those types of smaller capital projects, but the board could consider adding $1 million or some other amount from our positive results of operation for those one-time items that have come up or that have risen to the top that weren't previously able to be funded. Again, no actions requested at this time. We wouldn't spend any of the money until the audit confirms that it is there.
Ma'am?
Do these numbers include the schools as well? Are we doing that together now? No.
These do not, and I'll address that in a minute, but no, these do not include schools.
Okay.
We are working with schools, but these numbers don't include it yet. As you know, positive results of operations go into the capital projects reserve, so I just wanted to give a little recap of where we are. We did start FY17 with over $6 million, but by policy, we maintain $1.5 million in that fund. That left a little over $4.5 million available. There was activity during the year, and so we were our FY17 ending balance was about $775,000. The positive results of operations from that year would add another a little over $1.5 million to that, which would bring it over $2.3 million. And again, that assumes that all of the items on the previous slides those actions are taken by the board. Similarly, we have a policy that unspent school funds go to their capital projects reserve, and this slide just presents their status, including the two items we mentioned, the meals tax and the debt service savings. That would bring the school capital project to almost $900,000. Now, as you mentioned, Ms. Sellers, this does not include any unspent funds from the school yet. When we get that information, those numbers, that will be added to this amount. So this is simply what's already there and what the two new policy decisions could add. Okay.
currently have? 273?
273 was
So
what we
then
started with, and then if we add the meals tax of almost a half a million, and the school's debt service saving of 117 and change, then we would be at the 887, 779.
And then
To
whatever
that,
they have.
pardon?
And then whatever they have left.
To that, we would add whatever funds are unspent from FY17.
And have they developed a policy yet to where the money goes?
The budget appropriation lapses, so it reverts back to the county, and then the board's policy is to put it aside for school one-time needs. So to spend these funds, the school board would need to request appropriation for the Board of Supervisors, because under state law, the appropriation does lapse at year end.
But they don't have then a policy that says this is what we'd like to spend it on from there, so.
No, because it does get returned to the county. We have a strong history of returning it for one-time type projects, whether capital spending or buses or, items of that sort.
But not always.
Right, not
There have been exceptions.
And are they coming next month to talk to us? Is Dr. Benson coming?
The school annual financial report is due the end of this month, and so we do expect to have some updated information from them at that time. We do have an audit schedule. They're working in accordance with the schedule, so we're in pretty good contact with them, and we do expect some numbers from them in a couple of weeks. They'll
Dr. Benson
be
will
reporting to the school board, and then we'll have the similar information for the Board of Supervisors.
Okay, thanks.
We feel this positive year will be received very well by the bond rating agencies. They like to see positive results of operations. They like to see us add to our reserves and make provisions for planning for our future capital needs. So we'll be happy to share this information with them as well. Stepping away from the general fund, the utilities fund had a good year as well. User fees did come in slightly above budget, and we had strong availability fees, largely due to a couple of projects that came online. But as a result, we are in full compliance with all of our bond covenants and financial policies. In the transportation fund, we had a good year also. Our revenue is slightly above the budget. Gas tax came in about $400,000 above budget, and this would be due to the slight uptick in prices, in gas prices, not what we've seen here recently related to the weather. But
Let me just say that it's a relative statement to say we had a good year.
Yes.
Our gas
True.
tax, we don't have any money for transportation projects anymore in Stafford generated from this pot of money. We have, I think we're negative, so this would probably fill some hole that's been created by some obligations we've kind of made.
That's correct. Gas taxes have dropped significantly with gas prices over the past couple of years, and several $1 million. And so we were to the point where our ongoing revenues were barely covering the cost of some of the ongoing expenses, whereas previously we were able to fund some large construction projects and pay debt service on debt for other construction projects. We are, right now, between that and recordation tax coming in a little bit above budget. We do have a very small positive fund balance, but as you mentioned, that's without any capital spending from the FY17. And as you asked Ms. Sellers, schools are finalizing their numbers, and we do expect to get some information from them in the next few weeks. As Mrs. Maurer mentioned, we are beefing up some of our long-term financial planning. We've always done it, but we're putting a little bit more emphasis on it, partly because of our capital challenges. We do know we have some large capital projects, and we want to make sure that we adequately plan for that and provide all the information necessary as we go through those processes. Also, we have a new joint CIP process, and so there is a budget calendar on your consent agenda for your consideration. And other than that, the audit is underway, and we'll be happy to answer any questions you might have.
All right. Who has questions? Well, any comments? Certainly good to hear. A lot of us have suffered through year after year where this was not the kind of news we were getting anytime you talk to us about our budget. Okay. Thank you. Hi, Chris.
Good afternoon. Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Christopher Rapp, Director of Public Works. I'm pleased to provide the following road construction update. Garrisonville Road widening, the utility relocations are substantially complete, and the storm pipe installation and curb and gutter along the eastbound lane is complete, and asphalt placement along the eastbound lane is scheduled to start this week. We would then move over to the
Ms.
west.
Mauer, sorry, I'm interrupting you.
Sorry, on the Garrisonville Road widening, we're making a significant amount of progress. But when I drive down the road, there's a significant difference in the gravel base and where the current road is. I imagine, can you just, are we going to resurface that other section?
Well, we're going to, yes, it'll look great when it's all done.
Okay.
Yes.
And then with all the curb and gutter that's going into the Garrison, is the developer clearing trees for that project yet?
Not yet, not yet. It's all of what you've seen done is
It's
for
all the
our.
road construction?
Right.
Okay, thanks.
I could have swore I saw clearing a long time ago, when as soon as we did his approval.
Yeah, it hasn't, the infrastructure plan has not been approved yet.
Okay.
My understanding is they've submitted paperwork, maybe, or they're getting ready to submit paperwork. They're still hoping to get Regal open in 2018.
Okay, thank you.
The plans have been submitted, and there's some final comments that need to be addressed.
So they weren't issued a grading permit?
No, sir.
Okay, thank you.
So Mon Road sidewalk, we've had success on that. The construction is substantially complete. VDOT held an inspection, and we're addressing punch list items. Poplar Road and Mountain View Road intersection, Novec has started. They should be done relocating utilities within 60 days. We're clearing some trees for Verizon, and then Verizon should start relocating utilities. We've demolished one structure for that project. Juggins Road, this is for the extending or paving the road, improving the road for the new Moncure Elementary School. The plans have been designed. VDOT's authorized proceeding with the right-of-way phase. There's a small amount of right-of-way we need to obtain. Columbia Gas and Verizon are designing their utility relocations, and we're performing some geotechnical work. Brook Road, we hope to re-advertise that in December. We're going to extend the work hours, and hopefully that will reduce the bid cost. Belmont Ferry Farm Trail Phase 4, we're finalizing the National Park Service agreement. That's in the process of being executed, and the construction plans are being finalized this week. We're hoping to get permission from VDOT to put those out for construction bid. And that concludes my update.
Ms. Baumke?
Chris, what's the construction time frame once we receive bids and if we accept a bid for the Phase 4 of the Belmont Ferry Farm?
We're going to put that out for bid in November for construction, and we would construct that this spring.
Okay, so it'll take a couple months?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you.
I know it's not in your purview because Newland's doing it, but the CDA's doing it. But Mine Road, they're doing work there. Do you have any progress on that? And do you have any information, or can we get information on that?
I can certainly, I can reach out. I have contacts, and I can reach out. I know there's a lot of clearing going on, obviously. That's, in fact, I had some conversation a few months ago, and they're ahead of the schedule that they gave me. So I can certainly reach out and talk to them.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I was going to, but it might be easier if you do. And
Sure.
brief the whole board, because it's a pretty big project.
Yes, ma'am.
Chris, I'm afraid to ask, but I'm going to do it anyway. How would you characterize the situation here in front of the courthouse where we were hoping to add some turn lanes to create a better flow during rush hour and Sunday nights heading north? I'm going to try to do it for you first. I know we had cobbled together some funding to try to make up for a loss of funding we had originally anticipated. Is there a reason why I didn't hear you mention it?
And are you referring to the courthouse road Route 1 intersection?
Yes, the turn lane, and the raised median turn lanes at Hope Road also, I believe.
Yes, it also includes the Hope Road intersection and redoing those signals and adding turn lanes, so you'll have more efficient signalization.
We haven't stopped that, right? We had a problem with
No,
funding, but
sir,
we're moving forward.
In fact, I was speaking with the consultants last week, and they're finalizing the design plans in order to get right-of-way approval from VDOT. So I think we're close to getting approval to go to the right-of-way phase.
Thank you. Any other questions? Thank you, Chris.
You're welcome.
That brings us to the consent agenda. I've only had one item. Oops. Two, what's the other one? 8 and what? All right.
9.
So unless someone else
Motion
has
to
another.
approve.
There we go. I have a motion minus minus 8 and 9, a motion to approve the consent agenda. Please cast your votes. And you may tally those. All right, that passes unanimously. Mr. Snellings, you are number 8.
Yeah, I have a question. We're transferring that TAP money from the courthouse streetscape to Ferry Farm Trail. Once all this construction is done, will we be able to reapply for more TAP money for this project?
Yes, Mr. Snellings, the project that Mr. Milday had referred to, that is going to incorporate many streetscape features. But once we finish that project, we can certainly reapply for more TAP money for streetscape projects in the future.
Just a quick question. I don't want to put you on the spot, but if we knew this construction was coming, why did we apply as early as we did? Why didn't we just wait until the construction was complete and then apply? Because the way I'm thinking, we may have an issue getting more funds if we've already applied and been approved.
Mr. Smith.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Michael Smith, Deputy County Administrator. The funding for the TAP funding was before Chris was here. It was quite a bit ago, and it was also before we began the courthouse intersection project. And so we hadn't actually gotten to that project where we could get the smart scale funding. So we were planning on doing the streetscape, which had to be separated from the road project. And so we thought we could use the TAP money, which is for sidewalks, to do the sidewalks itself and then come back at a later date and do the construction of the intersection. It turned out that the smart scale project kind of got ahead of the TAP funding because we couldn't get enough of that to actually do the entire sidewalk project. And then VDOT requested, first of all, they said they were going to deallocate the money because we hadn't used it. And then they requested that we not move that TAP funding and incorporate it into the project because currently we don't have any federal funding on the courthouse intersection project, which makes it a lot more difficult to complete those projects with federal funding. So they asked us not to incorporate that funding in there because then the whole project becomes federalized. And that's why we want to move it to the separate project down in Belmont Ferry Farm Trail. And then if we need more, we think we can do it all with the smart scale, but if we need more, then we can come back for TAP money, sidewalk money later.
And we used streetscape money before it was called TAP money. Was it called, for what we see out here in front of the courthouse, and a little bit, I think we did over next in front of the schools?
Right, it was a different program. They switched the federal programs, but it's basically the same thing for sidewalks and beautification.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, with that said, unless there's further questions, I have a motion for Resolution R17-241.
I'll second. I seconded it in my own district. It's odd, but not unprecedented.
And the Ferry Farm's in mine, so.
Cast your votes. And you may tally the votes. And it passes unanimously. And number 9, who was that? That was me. All right.
I just was hoping that, where'd he go? Where'd Chris Rapp go? Maybe you could explain what's being proposed here, because it's pretty exciting.
This, the project in question is it's a sidewalk project. It's a TAP project where the county, there'd be a match. It would be a 20% match. So for $1 spent on the project, the state would provide 80 cents, and the county would provide 20 cents. And it's basically connecting two systems of sidewalk together from along Flatford Road, from Parkway Boulevard to Walpole Street. So we are excited about it. We've received many comments in the past from joggers and other people that requested a sidewalk in this location, so we're excited.
Yeah, we're pretty excited too. I get a lot of comments about that. And the Park Ridge has that nice trail. Then Hampton Oaks has sidewalks. Augustine has sidewalks. There's everything in front of Rodney Thompson. It's a small section of property. So thank you. Thank you for doing that.
You're welcome.
And with that, I don't know which one it is. I'll move approval.
R17-249.
Motioned and seconded.
Second.
And a comment, Ms. Maurer?
So as Ms. Sellers indicated, it's this short little area that that will connect the Rock Hill District and the Garrisonville District. This is an exciting project, and one of the things that I got a lot of comments when I went door to door was the lack of trails and sidewalks and ability to move around the county safely. They've actually worn a path in the grass along that area, so the sidewalk might be a little easier to install. So thank you, Ms. Sellers, for your efforts on that.
Any other comments? All right, please cast your votes. You may tally when ready. And that passes unanimously. Congratulations. And that brings us to our one unfinished business item, number 15. Planning and zoning amend Stafford County Code to establish a maximum light level at the property line of a single-family home. Hi, Jeff.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, board members. I'm Jeff Harvey, the Director of Planning and Zoning. This is a continuation of discussion of a public hearing from August. The chairman summarized the issue. We have two standards that are proposed in ordinance 017-13. One deals with establishing a maximum light level at the property line between residential properties. Currently, we only have the requirement between commercial properties and residential. We've had some complaints over time about neighbors shining lights onto neighbors' properties and finding it objectionable. So this would establish a uniform standard at the property line for all properties in the county at 0.5 foot candles. A foot candle generally is a measurement of light of a single candle at 1 foot away from that candle. And there are luxometers and other means of measuring that. The Second Amendment would deal with motion detector security lighting. Presently, our ordinance exempts that from the maximum light standards and other features. And they're limited to a maximum duration of 15 minutes in which the light can be on. This proposed amendment would reduce that maximum duration to 7 minutes. So if a security light is on permanently, it would not qualify for the exemption and have to meet all the normal maximum lighting level standards.
Ms. Sellers?
I think this gentleman showed us where it was 1, 5, 10. So how do we get to, I am curious to know how we chose 7 or 15. And could we move it to 5 or 1? I'm assuming that's what you wanted, to 1 or to 5.
Ms. Sellers, the number of 7 came up in discussions of compromise. There could be any amount of time that the board felt was reasonable for that duration of a security light. So it could be subject to the board's desires if you want to change it.
I guess Mr. Snelling's go ahead, sorry.
I met with staff and met with a representative of the Sheriff's Department. Jeff, you might want to talk about what the representative of the Sheriff's Department had to say about the foot candles, and I think he was also talking about the cutoff times.
Yes, Mr. Snellings, the representative from the Crime Prevention Unit was meeting with us to discuss the thought process and rationale behind these standards. In particular, the issue with the motion sensor lights for security. He thought they are extremely important for crime prevention. He felt that having a lower time frame for the lights to be on was a spirit of compromise on his standpoint. He feels it's very important that areas of properties be lit up in the case of potential crime, and it can deter crime. The 0.5 light level from his perspective is something where at the property line that it's dark enough that it provides people privacy, but also slightly light enough that you can see and not have a tripping hazard or other similar types of situations when you're walking on your property.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, he was pretty adamant about not reducing either one of those, and I just want to bring it to light to the board.
Bring it to light. Any other questions, Ms. Bomke, then Mr. Thomas?
Mr. Harvey, have we reached out to any of our comparative counties on what kind of ordinance they have on this regarding residential lighting?
Ms. Bomke, we had done that when we initially drafted our light standards. We also did that in discussion with this amendment. I don't recall specifically what the adjacent jurisdictions require, but certainly can get that to the board if that's something you desire.
But what you're saying is that you've already looked at that when you started the whole process?
Yes, ma'am.
Matter of fact, I asked him about it months ago.
Okay,
He
thank
said
you.
the same thing. Mr. Thomas, I think you had a comment?
Yes, Mr. Harvey, when we say residential property, we don't mention zoning category, so would that include a single-family home on A1 as well?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So if I have a barn full of 50 sheep, and I have coyotes that like to roam around, and I have a sensor on the outside of the barn to kind of ward them off, would this 7-minute apply to me as well?
Yes, sir, because that's a security light.
Okay.
It doesn't necessarily have to be a coyote. It could be someone going in there to steal sheep. We had
Right.
that incident last year, if I remember right.
We did. Okay, so we'll get to discussion later, but 1 minute would really concern me and probably a lot of my farmer friends.
And your sheep.
So would this change impact current homeowners, or are they all grandfathered?
Well, Ms. Sellers, it would apply to all current situations and new construction. In the case of new construction, we require lighting plans to be submitted as part of the site plan review process. So we look at the lighting levels that are shown for the light fixtures to ensure that they comply with the code. If we had a situation today where someone's security lighting was too bright for an extended period of time, we would look at it on a complaint basis and measure it against our current standard.
And so what happens if an HOA has a policy already in place that's different from this? Because there are some HOAs that you can't have a light on for 7 minutes in the middle of the night, or you're against your HOA.
Well, Ms. Sellers, the time limit is a maximum time limit for the 7 minutes for the security lighting to be on. So the HOA could have a standard that's more restrictive than that.
So they could say you can't, the maximum amount of time is the 3 minutes or is the 5 minutes?
Yes, ma'am. And
Okay.
we would advise the HOA, if they were the complainant, that this is the county standard, this is what we have to enforce. You may have more restrictive community standards, but that's something that the community itself would have to enforce.
Okay. And does every house have to have one of these? This is just if you have one of these.
Correct, if there's one on your property.
All right. Well,
All right. We are not in really the discussion phase yet, but any more questions for Jeff? So would someone like to make a motion to get us rolling?
Mr. Chairman, since I pulled it, I'll motion for approval of 017-13.
Motion and seconded. Now we are in the discussion phase. Mr. Thomas?
I'm tempted to ask for 15 minutes, but in the spirit of compromise, I'm willing to go forward with the 7, and then I just would warn the board that we might, in the future, maybe get some complaints. I don't see a lot of farmers complaining against each other, so I don't think it's a big concern. So because we're really trying to fix a residential problem, I'll be comfortable with 7 minutes.
All right. Any other comments? All right, well, I'll just say that, Mr. Gavin, you've been very involved in this, and you've approached probably all of us. I know that you've called me several times. I just want you to know that even though we don't always, we take seriously your concerns. I have certainly paid attention to everything you've said, but I'm going to vote for this just the same because I feel like it's the right thing to do. All right?
Are you directing me? Am I supposed to?
No, sir. And then,
What I'm supposed to, you just looked right at me and then talked to me. Am I supposed to respond to you? Is that-
no, sir, I was being courteous. Thank you.
I'm not interested in your vote.
All right. And cast your votes, please, and you may tally the votes. Tally when ready. And that passes unanimously. Thank you. And that brings us to our we're going to go into closed session now, and we'll come back out after closed session and handle the other items on the agenda that a lot of you are waiting to hear. Ms. Bonke?
A resolution to authorize closed meeting, whereas the board desires to hold a closed meeting for consultation with legal counsel employed by the county regarding 3 specific legal matters requiring the provision of legal advice by such counsel. That was 1, Item 2 is discussion and consideration of the disciplining of a specific public officer of the county. And 3, consultation with legal counsel and briefings by staff members pertaining to actual litigation where such consultation or briefing in an open meeting would adversely affect the negotiating or litigating posture of the board. And whereas pursuant to Virginia Code 2.2-3711A 5, 7, and 8, such discussions may occur in closed meeting.
Second.
Motion and seconded. Please cast your votes. And you may tally when ready. Thank you. And that passes unanimously. We're going into closed session. We'll be out of here back out here with you guys as soon as possible. You're welcome to wait. Items in closed session can drag on. Number 16 is an item I stuck on the agenda to discuss the county cemetery ordinance.
Oh, we got a motion.
Motion to certify closed.
Motion to certify.
Second.
All right, motion and seconded. Please cast your votes. You may tally them. And it passes unanimously. Now we are officially out of closed session. And number 16 is discuss the county's cemetery ordinance. Basically, I would just like to ask the board to send this ordinance back down to the Planning Commission to address the concerns that we heard voiced from Mr. Khan earlier. And at that point, of course, the Planning Commission could do other things with it if they wanted to, engage other opinions. So I'll ask for a motion.
But we agreed not to do a motion because we need time to do to do the language, but we agreed.
Oh, right, of course, we can't motion because
Right.
we are in,
But-
we have bylaws that don't allow us to do a new business to be passed along. So we're going to move it. The next meeting it will be on the agenda, but
Sense of the board was.
the sense that I got from the board is that this will have no problem being sent to the Planning Commission at the next meeting. All right, no one's disagreeing. So that dismisses with that. It'll get moved to the Planning Commission at the next meeting. Number 17 is discuss the traffic light at Telegraph Road, Woodstock and Jefferson Davis Highway. And Mr. Cavalier?
Yes, as of, I think it was last Monday, there was a terrible car wreck at the intersection there coming out on Telegraph Road at Route 1, and it happened to be a new teacher from Stafford Middle School. And it's just one of the many accidents that have occurred in that area. You have a sheriff's report on the accidents listed, highlighted by yellow at that same spot. Several years ago, probably 15 by now, I asked VDOT to put in a light at that intersection. Instead, there was a light put in just to the south of that location. But since then, another school has been built. Shirley High Middle School is now located on Telegraph Road along with Wadwater Elementary School, so that they basically doubled the school population there and the amount of buses and parents and teachers and everybody that travels there. There's no safe way of entering Route 1 going left because of the intersection there. At this point, I think that the HB2 process that we had, Smart Scale now, if you may, has approved a light there, and we've contributed some money toward that, leftover Widewater Service District money, so that has been approved. It's just the design has not even been finalized, and so we're going to, I can't get a good timeline out of VDOT on this yet, but I'm guessing 2 to 3 years. And so in the meantime, I'd like to do here what we did at Colonial Forge for the school safety there at the high school and put in a temporary traffic light on Route 1 at the intersection, and there's a resolution in your add-on folder to that effect. The only question that I had was for Mike Smith, because he actually gave me this idea when we talked about the temporary light, and the resolution states only the intersection at Telegraph Road, the southern entrance, and we discussed Woodstock Lane as a possibility too. Are we ruling that out now?
Well, in talking with VDOT, they thought that the Woodstock Lane intersection would be more dangerous to put a light at because of the curve on either side of it, and they haven't, like I had mentioned, we're working with them about the intersection at Telegraph Road and Route 1, and they haven't said no, but we haven't quite been able to get them convinced on yes. They do admit that it's a safety issue, and we could change the resolution to go either way, and that way that would give them a choice, and we can continue that conversation, but I think the resolution from the board would help push this item further along.
Yeah, I would like that latitude that the resolution state Telegraph Road and/or
Okay.
or Woodstock Lane, just to give us full flexibility there, because either one, I think, will suffice as a temporary measure here in this case.
Mr. Thomas?
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion to waive the bylaws due to the time sensitivity, safety nature of this, so Mr. Cavalier can offer a motion.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion on waiving the bylaws? Cast your votes. You may tally the votes.
Thank you. Then I would like to make a motion for R17-262 with the addition of temporary traffic signal at the southern intersection of Telegraph Road and Jefferson Davis Highway, or Woodstock Lane and Jefferson Davis Highway.
All right, I have a discussion now. Any discussion on this? Ms. Maurer?
One of the things that I would like to say to the public is that Mr. Cavalier has worked tirelessly on this light. I know one of the main reasons that I'm supporting it is because of a safety issue. And, every time this gets brought up, and it's brought up on a regular basis, at least the entire time I've been on the board, is it always seemed like it was imminent. And so this 2 to 3 years is extremely concerning given the safety considerations on it. And so it's not for lack of effort. And I appreciate this idea.
Are there any questions of staff right now on this? I have a few. I don't know who is here. Jeff, maybe, our transportation. What is the cost of a permanent light versus the cost of a temporary light? If you were just, I know you can't be sure, the situation would vary, but.
Right, it depends on the intersection and all that, but a permanent light is 300 to 350. A temporary light we can do around 100,000.
What are they made out of? Something different?
Right, instead of having the rigid poles, it'll basically be the wooden poles with the cable strung across.
And just because we want a light there, did the warrants have been met? Is there any question as to whether or not it would be allowed by VDOT?
Well, we've spoken with VDOT about it, and the whole reason that the HB2 or Smart Scale project was approved is because it's a safety issue
Sure.
at that area. So due to the safety issue, we believe that with a board resolution.
Everybody it's the angled approach. And what about, anyone that drives that area knows the rush hour traffic there is really bad. I want to know how this traffic light may or may not affect the rush hour traffic flow.
And that is one of the concerns for the southbound that may want to turn left onto Telegraph Road. They're concerned that there may be a traffic issue, and that's one of the things that we have to discuss with VDOT and consider during the design.
And how long will it take to get the temporary, how long till it's up?
That depends on working with VDOT. It can be relatively short. If we want to do changes to Route 1 to add a turn lane, that would make it a lot longer. So we're going to try to keep it as limited as possible, possibly no left turns onto Telegraph Road from southbound, so that we don't have that problem with the rush hour.
One of my concerns is we've had the conversation about extremely limited transportation. Where's the money coming from? Out of the project budget? Is that what I hear?
No, it could not come out of the project budget. It would have to come out of our SSYP and/or.
Okay, so we don't have enough, we don't have our transportation fund, which is overtaxed
Right, it's
right
very
now.
limited.
So I'm worried that we're going to pay for a temporary light at an intersection that's been bad since I moved here 30 years ago, way before the school. And then a year later, tear it down and hopefully, because I know this project is moving. This is not a maybe. Jack did push this forward, and it is happening. It's going to be a whole rework. That intersection won't look like it looks now. Will not be an angled approach, unless they make it a one-way approach. And then they bring the traffic back to Woodstock. So I'm worried that there might not be much of a gap. Can you speak to how much, what we're going to get for our 100,000 that we're not going to spend on?
The HB2 funding, we have some funding from the Whitewater District, but the HB2 funding is going to be between 18 and fiscal year 20. So this project won't be completed until fiscal year 20. So it'll be a couple of years. So
Yeah, 2 or 3 years, Mr. Cavalier said that. But you think you can get the light up within a year, even with a turn lane?
not with a turn lane, but we believe that we can not have those left turns and we can get it done. Right now, this is all preliminary, so I hate to say for sure, but
Thinking, is there any way to make a caveat here that we can get a chance to look at that as it's moving forward before we just, I mean, I know it's emotional, someone got hurt.
Before any money, the board will have to authorize if the SSYP money is going to go there. We'll come bring this back to the board. This is just to authorize them to consider the light, and then we'll look at the design, we'll talk to VDOT, and once they make that decision, we'll bring it back and consider funding with the
So this
board.
is just to consider a light.
Yes.
The resolution states that we are requesting VDOT to put up a temporary light, no more, no less. It doesn't include any money. And if I could, I did speak with Sheriff Decatur, and I know that he brought Jason Foreman with him, who's his traffic expert, and I would like to have them provide some input.
What, Mrs. Maurer has a question. I know, you want to ask a question now, or?
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, David Decatur, Sheriff of Stafford.
Sheriff, good to see you.
So here's what we've found so far this year. We've had, counting the car crash we had that has been brought up last week, we've had 22 crashes. Those are reportable. And there's a certain criteria for a reportable crash, certain amount of damage, $1,500 worth of damage or injury or death. So that's reportable that we have so far in our audit. And that is in the area of Telegraph Road in Woodstock, and then Telegraph Road on the southern end of it near the crucifix, in that particular area.
So if, I know that our request has us putting a light at, did we just say the southern terminus, right? You limited it?
Either
So
or.
how, but wouldn't you have to limit the access to Telegraph then if you were to put it at Woodstock? Because otherwise people could still approach, still make the dangerous turn onto Route 1 off of Telegraph if it somehow ended up at Woodstock. How does this plan keep people from, because I think what's more dangerous if you've been there is the angled approach where the crucifix is.
The left-hand
all-
turn.
All I can say, and having dealt with this issue for the last 20 years, is that people will go where the light is. They're not stupid. They're going to go at the intersection on Route 1 where it's a safe place to make a left turn, which it is not right now, and that's the reason I'm doing this.
Right, yeah.
We
Put in your-
we could post, or VDOT could post, and Sergeant Foreman had mentioned to me, it's a good idea, no left-hand turn there on the end of Telegraph Road near the crucifix.
That's what I'm thinking, Mr. Cavalier. Are you willing to consider that too?
That would keep people from making a left-hand turn, crossing over. I think the last traffic crash we had, it was the motorist making a left-hand turn to go southbound on Route 1, and then someone traveling northbound collided into the vehicle.
We are requesting VDOT provide guidance, and
Okay.
this is all very preliminary at this point. We're getting ahead of the game, I believe.
I've asked all the questions I need to ask. Ms. Maurer?
I just have one question, although I think it's a moot point given Mr. Cavalier's last comment. But one of the things, one of the things that I noticed when we did the Route 1 610 intersection, that was a county-run project, was that not correct?
We put in the turn lanes and then VDOT put in the lights.
Okay, but the county did the turn lanes and all the road work down there?
Yes.
Because that thing moved at lightning speed. I've never seen a VDOT project. Is it possible that, I mean, in part of this discussion, is it possible to see if the county can run the project in putting up the,
We'll work closely with VDOT and determine who administers it. For
Okay.
these kind of things, they have contractors that are on call that can do it, and I think they would probably be able to do it faster than we could, because we'd have to put out an RFP and everything in the design, whereas I think they could do it faster than we could.
okay, thank you.
I was intimately involved in that project with Keith Dayton, and it was not lightning fast. It took years to get it from concept to completion.
Actual construction, though, went quickly.
Yes. Okay, we have all the questions and comments we need. Do you want to discuss this any further? All right, cast your vote. You may tally the votes. All right, that passes unanimously. We'll look forward to hearing more about that. All right, number 18, Ms. Sellers.
So the Confederate flag, what everybody, I think, is been coming to speak to us for quite some time about. So I did ask for this to be put on the agenda because there hasn't been a public discussion, and you guys have now come to see us several times. So there's a couple of different issues. One, we've asked the attorney, and he's going to provide his opinion here in a minute. But first, I want to address some of the other things that have been coming up. You know, the race issues and the conversations around race. And it's a deep issue. You know, it's hard to discuss. And something that's impacted me the most is sitting up here and hearing things that maybe the government could be doing that are either validating those negative feelings or things we're not doing to validate those feelings or to invalidate those feelings. Specifically when it comes to our sheriff's department. Our sheriff, and for those who've been around for a while and know Sheriff Decatur and then his predecessor, Sheriff Jett, they take this issue very seriously. And so what I have asked to do, and I'm going to do for the next month's public safety meeting, is actually ask the sheriff to come and talk about the Multicultural Coalition. He has had a lot to do with that when it began. It is an actual entity. The county did work with it and has been working with it. And then it just kind of went away. None of us really knew where it went until here recently. So we are going to bring that to public safety and have an opportunity to hear from the sheriff. As far as the other race things that have been mentioned, you know, this is a very personal issue for many of us, myself included. So it's very hard to discuss, but on whatever side of the issue you're on, I would love to sit down and have these community conversations. And I open myself up and my time up, and no, it's not political, it's 100% personal. I am a longtime member of the NAACP. My son and my foster child are both African American. Actually, my foster daughter is not, she's half African American, but she's Hispanic and Muslim. So we talk about race in our house all the time. So yes, I am aware of what's said, and I would say to everybody in this room the same thing that I would tell my children is the only way that you make a change in this world is through your actions. And so I have not been too supportive of the idea of the billboards, just because we need to act accordingly, not just put up billboards. You know, words are not going to take it away. So if these things are being perpetuated in the community, we need to talk about them. And we need to find out where they're coming from, and we need to stop the source. And so as far as that's, again, why I brought up the sheriff, and we're going to talk about it, public safety, because I know for a fact that what was said here a couple of weeks ago is not true. And I would like to talk about the history of that and then kind of what we see as the future of that. With that, I believe I'm going to be making a motion right now to allow the county attorney to give his statement on the other issues, the zoning issues, the permit issues.
Friendly amendment. I think we agreed it's legal advice. It's not an official position or statement. You okay with that?
All right.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second to give the county attorney
Advice.
permission to give us his legal opinion.
Advice.
Legal advice.
Legal advice, I'm sorry. All right, please cast your votes. And you may tally. And that passes unanimously. Bob, do you want to mention, follow up on something Ms. Sellers said before we go into the?
I just wanted to update the board and the community as well. Since the last meeting, Supervisor Baumke and I had a chance to sit down and, like Laura said, have some conversations. And we met with the Multicultural Coalition, and we found out that they are still existing. It's pretty vibrant. I think about 25 people have been showing up to about every other month meetings. So that group does exist. I was hoping to have something a little more formal from them that they had approved as far as where they were, but I don't have that, so I don't want to speak for them. But I did want to let the community know that one of those non-legal pieces of advice we got from y'all, we're taking action on that just to see where that might lead us. So.
Can I add to that, Paul?
No.
Oh, okay, then go ahead. I wanted to tell them about the banner.
Could you speak up since this is a public hearing?
Okay.
She was asking if she could, if she was pointing of order, if she could speak on something. And with that, we will go back to where we were in this, which was turning over to the county attorney.
Before I introduce myself and share some of the processes we've gone through as a board and as an office, let me just explain what we did in that little motion there. As the county attorney, I am the counsel, legal advisor, and a representative that confers with the Board of Supervisors on a confidential basis. That's why we go back into executive session. It's kind of a standing joke when the county attorney has time to speak. I always defer my comments because I particularly, as the county attorney in residence at this time, until I retire or somehow cease to hold this office, I choose not to speak publicly because I believe very firmly in the attorney-client privilege, that I give advice and counsel to my client, the board, and the departments and the county administration outside of the public hearing. If I gave advice in front of you all the time, I would be telling my adversaries, a couple of whom are probably in this office right now, about our trial strategy, what we plan to do, what the weaknesses are in a case, what the strengths are, and they benefit greatly from that. So I choose not to do that. So I've asked tonight, for the first time, when I'm advising them in front of you and sharing with you my comments, that they pass a motion that says that I have their authority to do that, so that I have no ethical impropriety to deal with, and that the board has authorized me to speak. The confidentiality privilege that I speak of, the attorney-client privilege, is not a privilege that I can waive for them. It's not a privilege that any member of the board can waive. It can only be waived by the board. I thought it might be a good idea to start out, and this is not in this remaining audience, to try to build myself up in your eyes, but to try to share with you my understanding of where you are coming from. I'm now 75 years of age, and this summer I celebrated my 50th year of practicing law. For 40-some years I was in the private sector, and I've been here as the county attorney since October of 2010. When I came here, the board asked me if I would be a potted plant, or would I be someone that would help them get from point A to point B by giving them sound legal advice. And that was easy for me to answer because all of my life in the private sector and coming into that interview and then beyond, I have believed in giving my client the best possible legal advice I can give them. Sometimes it's not what they want to hear. And I can assure you, when we go into closed session, there are many times that I give them advice that they don't particularly like to hear. And we have some very, very good and strong and hard conversations. And please, counsel, don't continue to take notes back there of everything I say. I meant that with all courtesy to you. But I want to share with you that we go through a very hard exercise back there, and this issue that you have before you is not isolated here in the Fredericksburg, Stafford, Spotsylvania area, as you well know. It's an issue that we've got throughout the country. We have the issue of hate throughout the country. But you know, there are a lot of things that we deal with in a free society that are hard to sometimes understand. How can you do this? How can you allow somebody to fly this flag, or how can you put up a Nazi swastika, or how can you burn a flag? I served 11 months and 29 days in Vietnam in a combat zone. To this day, if I see someone burning the American flag, fortunately I've never been present, that is so disrespectful and hateful to me. And I relate that to what you're saying about how hateful it is to you to see that Confederate flag, that I want to grab a hold of that person and bring them great harm. But you know, I have to dig down deep and really understand that there's a First Amendment that our forefathers created that said, you know, you can't do that. If you do that, if you bring harm to them, you're the one that's going to end up in jail. I have to stand by and watch that person burn that American flag. Now, that's my personal big problem. When I drive, and I went to the Virginia Military Institute, which is deeply steeped in Confederate history. VMI is the only college in America that ever went to war as a fighting unit in the Battle of Newmarket. So my heritage is deeply steeped in all of this. But it has not persuaded me from what I believe the Constitution requires me to do and say when I advise this board. Now, as you sit out there, I don't know how you take my comments so far, but I'm trying to tell you that I'm not a patsy for this board. They've never asked it, and I wouldn't give it to them. I give them strong, hard legal advice as to what they can do and what they can't do. And that's what we've done in this case. It happened also back in 2014. The same issue came before the board, and we advised them at that time. And the answer then is the same as the answer now.
Ms. Joshi, if you speak out again, you're going to have to leave this room.
I'm trying to tell you, it's not my personal beliefs. My belief is in the Constitution of the United States.
Ma'am, I'm seriously, please leave. Yes, thank you. Mr. Schumate, would you please continue?
The whole purpose of what I've said, if it has been missed on anyone, is that I understand the strong feelings that you have. Because I have strong feelings sometimes as well. I can relate to what you're saying. I think some of you have spoken very well on your particular perspective as I've listened to it over the sessions we've had. But I have recently had occasion to give this board advice, once again, about their legal standing vis-a-vis the flag and the flagpole and the consequences of what they can and cannot do. And I have concluded without equivocation, both back in 2014 and now, that this county has no legal authority to require the removal of that Confederate flag from that private property on that flagpole, which is 80 feet in height.
Coward!
The board has wrestled with this back in 2014. It has wrestled with it for the last several weeks. My office has not wrestled as much with it because we clearly understand what the law is in this case. The law is very clear that the First Amendment does not allow this governmental body to remove that Confederate flag from that 80-foot flagpole. Let me review with you several talking points. First of all, the building permit issuance. Our office back in 2014 and now in the current environment has looked at the building permit process. The issuance of the permit is found by our office to be in accordance with all regulations, past precedents, and it's all in proper order. It's been inspected after construction and once again found to be in proper order. There is nothing wrong with the building process that has been taking place in this case, and that is not a means by which you can rely on undoing what has been previously done and require the removal of the flag. Next, many people have said, could you just pass another zoning ordinance that reduces the height of the flag? If you could do it in the proper way, you could do that. You could go to 35, you could go to 25, you could do all those things. But this flagpole would be grandfathered, meaning it would become a non-conforming use and it will remain. You will not be able to reduce the height of this flagpole through a new zoning ordinance that you would pass. So that pole and the flag on it would remain. Next point is the flag itself. Without the recitation of untold authorities, it's been the law of this land under the First Amendment that that Confederate flag may fly. It may be very disrespectful to some people, and I respect that. That was my whole intention of the preamble to my discussion. It may be something that you can't, it's very hard to understand. But the Constitution of the United States, as interpreted by our highest court in the land, has uniformly said, without equivocation, that that Confederate flag and flags like that are political expressions that are allowed to withstand the legal test of outside challenges. If we were to, or this board were to, contrary to my legal advice, attempt to take down that flagpole on private property, this is not governmental property. There's always a distinction there. If this were governmental property, it could be handled differently. But it's private property, privately owned, private flag, and a private pole. We've checked with VDOT, I might add, in the process then, and once again, VDOT has no power to regulate that sign, or not the sign, but the pole or the flag. It's not in their right-of-way. If this board were to take some action contrary to my legal advice, they would expose themselves to litigation, in my opinion. Either the property owner would file a lawsuit against them for invading his civil rights or violating his civil rights, or the Virginia flaggers would probably file a lawsuit in some form to challenge what they've done and expose these people to liability. Their normal governmental immunity would be done away with, and they could be sued individually as well. I can't let them take some untoward action that might be popular in some quarters, but be also outside the framework of the law as we know it to be. To my way of thinking, as their legal counsel, and what I've advised them, and I believe they are following it, is that they cannot do anything with regard to the height of that pole on private property, and they can't do anything with that flag, once again, on that pole on private property. It is constitutionally protected. So therefore, my conclusion is to them that we have no legal or regulatory authority to remove the flag or the flagpole. I ran across a quote by Alberto Gonzales, former Attorney General of the United States, that I'd just like to read in conclusion. And this relates to the tragic shooting in Charleston, South Carolina back in 2015. Because tempers were running very high, very sensitive, as you all know. But he said as follows, and I'm going to quote the entire passage, and I'll conclude on that. Excuse me. The tragic shooting in a church in Charleston, South Carolina, by an apparent Confederate disciple has intensified debate over the meaning of the Confederate battle flag. Many Americans believe this flag is a symbol of hate and a reminder of the evils of slavery. Others say it is merely a symbol of our heritage and a way of life gone by. Either way, the Confederate flag is a symbol that conveys a message. Therefore, it is speech. And I insert parenthetically, that is what is protected by the First Amendment. In fact, the stronger the reaction to the Confederate flag, the stronger the argument that the flag conveys a message that ordinarily is protected under the First Amendment. Alberto Gonzales was the former Attorney General to the United States under George W. Bush and is also White House counsel. And I thought those words were words not from me, but from someone of some stature that had to deal with this very issue on a regular basis of, what's protected and what's not. There's no limit the First Amendment rights, but there is very strict scrutiny as to what you can and cannot do. And right now, this board's hands are tied. They cannot do the simple things that one might think they can do. They can't go out and just arbitrarily mandate through some zoning ordinance change that flagpole come down or that flag come down. It's just not constitutionally permissible. Now, that's my honest legal advice to this board, and I submit that to you, and I submit that to the board. And I thank you for your time. Thank you, members of the board.
Thank you, Mr. Shoemate. And with that, that was our last item. I will adjourn this meeting. I wish everyone a good evening.